everybody. Welcome to another episode of Purple Insider presented by FanDuel. Matthew Coller here, and on the show tonight joining me is Mike Clay from ESPN with his giant amount of projections that he does for every single team. Well, we're going to break down a bunch of them for the Minnesota Vikings. So I'll get right into that and then stick around after because I will continue to chat with you guys about how Mike Clay projects the Minnesota Vikings. So we could talk about the 2026 season. And then I've got predictions for two divisions. And also, if you stick around long enough, we'll play a little game of Guess the Viking. So should be a really great night over the next couple hours, but let's fire it up to start with Mike Clay of ESPN. All right, now we welcome into the show ESPN fantasy guru, hater of all 32 teams, and every year we get together in June to look at Mike Clay's projections and analyze every single one, and I mean every single one, right down to how many carries Max Bredesen is going to get this year. So welcome back to the show, Mr. Clay. How we doing?
I am good. It's 2 is the carry total, so we'll pick that apart for sure for Bredesen. More targets than carries, but you're going to tell me if I'm right or wrong. What you don't know, though, since last time we spoke, is that I don't just hate on all 32 teams. I hate on books too, right? I work my way through books and grade them, kind of do unit grades. Is the cover good? Is the paragraphs good? All that. So I have this new one. I don't know if you've heard of this one here. I got. We're kind of working through this one. Any thoughts on this one? Because I need more than Max Bredesen feedback from you. I need to know if you think this book's any good.
For the audio listeners, he's holding up my book. Football is a numbers game. I'm glad that you have it.
Oh, weird. Look, I didn't know. Oh, didn't realize.
You cut your teeth with PFF. That gave you the the rocket fuel to become ESPN's go-to fantasy guy. So well, I'm glad that you liked it. I assume since you're holding it up, you liked it. That I graded well on your score. That you projected it high, and then it lived up to expectations for you.
Yeah, I loved it. We needed a chapter on PFF fantasy and how that kind of launched PFF into a company that made some money from the consumer, because that was a big part of it for sure. So I could give you a hard time for that, but no, you did an A+ job. It's awesome to see that, because just being there at the beginning or toward the beginning for PFF and kind of in the launch was kind of awesome. It had its ups and downs, as you know, from writing this one and researching it, but it's a fun thing to look back at.
Well, it means a lot, man. And when I first started diving into it, I thought, I don't even know if I'm going to have a book here. And I was really kind of thinking more analytics revolution and then just sort of tell the story. And then I found there was so much more to PFF becoming what it is that anyone would have ever expected. And now every single game plan, every single front office move is influenced in some way by data. Even Nolan Teasley, whose background is scouting, one of the things that he said was that everything they do is anchored in data, meaning that you're not making any sort of move or decision without looking at what it says. And then he hires an assistant general manager who worked for Football Outsiders, which, was competition for PFF back in the day and that kind of thing. So it's a fascinating analytics world. I'm curious about just from your perspective, having worked for PFF, like when you're making your projections, which we'll get into in a second, like how much are you using data and models and things like that? Or is it a lot of gut analytics for you, Mike?
There's certainly a lot of, let's say, features of my model that I've built using data for sure. So I need to rely on people like you to help me say, okay, this guy's winning this battle. This is going to be the fullback. This is going to be the fourth linebacker to make the team, or this is how the running back touches are going to be distributed. I can tweak that sort of thing. But things like, okay, catch rate, yards per target, average depth of throw, that stuff I'm using a lot of research, whether it's league trends, coach trends, player trends, you name it, scheme, obviously with coaching and play caller changes, all of that. So it's a mix of both, to be quite honest. But look, when I first started at PFF, we had all this data and no one was doing anything with it. It was just sitting there in a feed. So for example, depth or air yards, as they're commonly referred at times, that was a stat I had given to me that no one else had. And I was like, man, I wish that someone smarter than me had this and could come up with stats. So I started to create things like average depth of target, but I was really looking forward to the day where people way smarter than me got a hold of that. And now we're seeing that. We've seen that over the last decade or so, people with, degrees in every sort of category you could think of working with this stuff. And it's kind of taken analysis of football, fantasy, and NFL to the next level, which has been awesome.
There's so many things that we take for granted now, man. Like even just quarterback pressures. When you just say like, well, this guy had a pressure rate of this, just like, oh yeah, okay. Like we all understood that intuitively before, but we didn't have that data. Now we have, I mean, this goes back to what, 2007, like all the historical data that we can make comparisons with guys. And you mentioned like ADOT or yards per route run, like those things that we just use every single day. Like it's super normal. But before they came along, it was box score stats. And then, Football Outsiders did a lot of this stuff as well. Their DVOA statistics definitely pushed us forward into that area, and a lot of studies that they did as well. So that got us to where we are now, which is where they have the big data bowl at the combine, which you mentioned, like hundreds of nerds doing different projects with analytics. And the NFL just walks in and hires them. Like, it's amazing. Like the NFL just shows up to that event and then just hires a bunch of people from it. So now you have these loaded front offices, and it's kind of an arms race with data of who can figure out how to use it the best, because we really just got our hands on the tracking stuff. And I feel like teams are just starting to figure out even how to deploy that.
Yeah, no doubt. And, it's still so new. When I first got into this kind of stuff, it was about 20 years ago. I mean, snaps weren't even a thing. My first ever projection model, I didn't even have snaps. I was just literally hand typing box scores from ESPN. And this is, again, before PFF, before I was even there, before that site even existed, just hand typing targets, catches. Like targets were like an innovative stat to use for projections. So I remember then when I started at PFF, just hand typing snap counts onto Twitter and pressing enter for each team. And that's how I built such a big following, because it was unheard of stuff. So I'd get all the retweets, and the beat writers, one of them. So, I mean, that was less than 20 years ago. So think about where we are now compared to then, when it was just like snaps were like this mind blowing thing. Now, less than 20 years later, it's just, you can't even keep up with it all now.
Isn't it interesting though, that from a public perspective, there is not a huge change in the game, like what's happening behind the scenes, and especially game planning and front office decisions. Like I was thinking about how the Jets drafted a fullback in the first round, like many years ago. Was that maybe Fred Baxter? Like you would never have that ever again, because all these things have been really studied down to the letter of the positional value that we talk about so much at draft time. And when it comes to game planning, they know all your tendencies, all their tendencies, and it's who can kind of break them in the right ways. If you're the team that's the best 2nd down and 7 running team in the league, like that might help you, right? But on the outside, if you just sit down and watch a football game, it doesn't look wildly different. It's not like baseball where everyone strikes out a million times. It's not like basketball where everyone takes a million 3-pointers. I find that fascinating that the game has not completely become wildly different than it was even like 15 or 20 years ago.
Yeah, total fair point. And you started to see teams that kind of were ahead of the game would get an advantage, and you see swings, because the thing that's different is like in football, it's a matchup thing, right? So if the team starts trending toward 11 personnel heavy, the defenses adjust, and then the offense has to swing back the other direction. That's why a lot of times you'll see like Kyle Shanahan with the Niners, or Bill Belichick was famous for this with the Patriots, of like just zigging when they're zagging all the time. They were just doing things differently. I remember when I first started tracking receiver corner matchups, thinking like Belichick's just laughing at everyone else. I mean, I'm just tracking what they're doing, and it's unlike what anyone else is doing. And he does that with personnel on both sides of the ball. He was always ahead. And now you're seeing the shift this year, which we're going to see more so probably than ever before, is back towards 12 personnel. Obviously, that was the big theme during the draft. I think part of that was like it was just a strong class for tight ends, but obviously a lot of GMs and coaches are talking about more heavy personnel. So that's the next adjustment, and it's just going to swing back the other direction in a few more years. So yeah, you're right. And I think that's why the game stays very similar, is because it's just always a zigging and zagging back and forth with schemes, personnels, run heavy, pass heavy. It's always evolving.
If you're a 248-pound linebacker, don't give up yet. They might need you, because things went so lighter on the linebacker side, the safety side, and then teams went, well, what if we run into that? What if we use 3 tight ends on the field? And I still think the best way to be is versatile, where you can And we'll get into this with the Vikings. Like they can run 11 personnel with Juwan Jennings out there. They can run 2 tight ends. They can run a fullback. Mm-hmm. So the big question though is how much is it all going to help Kyler Murray? So why don't we begin in that most obvious spot, or JJ McCarthy, but your assumption in your projections would be the same as mine, that Kyler Murray will be the starting quarterback of this team. So here's what you got. And we won't go into deep analytics of what your projected PFF grade is for these players, but you've got Kyler Murray at 3,345 yards, 19 touchdowns, 10 picks, and 443 yards rushing with 3 touchdowns. Now, last year, I remember us talking about benefit of the doubt that JJ McCarthy was very reasonably getting. I don't think any of us would have predicted the stat line that he ended up with versus what we thought in terms of the supporting cast propping him up. Did that influence you being a little more safe here with Kyler Murray? Because you have not projected a glow up for Mr. Murray. This is more of like an average season for him.
Yeah, so last year I gave the benefit of the doubt to Kevin O'Connell because of what we had seen. That's what we talked about. Like, okay, if they're not really going to have a backup plan and McCarthy's going to be the guy, and you have a coach who has at that point, we didn't know if Sam Darnold was a product of the players around him and the coaching in Minnesota, and the wheels were going to fall off in Seattle. Obviously, that didn't happen. I mean, you can credit O'Connell for some of that or a lot of that, getting his game to the next level, but it obviously wasn't as clear as just plugging in McCarthy and everything's all systems go. We learned that he didn't play very well, and it was kind of a disaster. I do think that this year I have kind of mixed feelings on Kyler Murray because, look, he was not the best at getting the most out of his skill players in Arizona. He had, I think, from a fantasy perspective, 1 top 12 scoring receiver during his whole run, which obviously that's counting stats. You know, he didn't really get them the ball enough to put up big numbers other than DeAndre Hopkins that 1 year. And it's tricky with Minnesota because what's their strength? It's the guys around the quarterback on offense. You want to get the ball to Jefferson. You want to get it to Addison. Now you want to get it to Juwan Jennings and TJ Hawkinson and Aaron Jones out of the backfield. That's your strength. So, but it's going to be a low volume pass offense because he's going to run the ball plenty. The one thing I will say is that makes me feel a little bit more optimistic about Murray versus where we were with McCarthy last year is that he's kind of evolved a little bit into more of an accurate conservative passer. He'll still add value with his legs, which is good, but he'll get the ball out of his hands quick. So if they can find ways to maximize that and take advantage of that, I think that it can work out for Minnesota. So I think the ceiling is lower than where you'd want to be, and I think that's why you probably have a lot of people that want McCarthy to win this job because you're hoping recent first-round pick. We don't know what the ceiling is. Maybe he proves to be better, but Murray's the more high-floor player. And with a pretty good team around him, there's a chance that he can, get this team at least back in the playoff conversation.
Trying to project Kyler Murray to here is not quite as difficult as it would have been for projecting Sam Darnold to here, where Darnold had only played for just abominable franchises, but was never any good at all. Kyler Murray in 2024 is pretty good. He was PFF's 12th rated quarterback, threw for 3,800 yards, ran for 500. But when you look at Arizona's team, whether it's the inexperienced coach that they had, Jonathan Gannon, or the receivers, like Marvin Harrison has not become what people thought he was supposed to be. And he ended up pumping the ball to the one guy that I thought was actually good at football, Trey McBride, over and over again. But it's just so different. And it's interesting because you mentioned he hasn't really done this for receivers except the guy that's the most like Justin Jefferson. And this is just so built by design to get the ball to Justin Jefferson. For me, it really hinges entirely on that, for whether he's going to exceed the expectations that you've set here, which is a pretty mediocre season. Maybe this would have him be like the 18th to 20th best quarterback in the league. If he's going to excel past that, it really has to be his connection with Justin Jefferson, which I guess we should look at in conjunction with this, where you've got Jefferson at 111 catches, 1,375 yards. I feel like if Kyler has that season with Justin Jefferson, that he should clear the numbers that we're setting as kind of the bar here.
Yeah, I do. Like, as you just said, I projected Jefferson for a very good bounce back season. It's not quite his ceiling. And again, I think part of that is Kyler's going to pull it down and scramble. And also, I don't think they're going to be a high scoring offense. So, and remember, we can't forget this about Kyler. he lost his job in Arizona. Okay, this is not for a bad team. He lost his job. They were ready to move on. They cut him loose. So keep that in mind. This is not a guy that we're like, oh, they just spent up and got this like terrific MVP candidate. Free agent acquisition. It's not the same thing, and we have to keep that in the back of our mind. However, to your point, he did have times where if he had that clear alpha number one target, he maximized DeAndre Hopkins. We saw that. And he had I think he finished like fourth in fantasy points. So one year, another year he was like top 10 in points per game, but got hurt, whatever. The point is, I feel, excuse me. I'm also, sorry about that. Drinking a smoothie, got a chia seed right in my throat right now, Matt. So I'm hanging in there, but we're good now. So I do think there's enough here where Jefferson can put together a strong season. It's the other guys that I'm worried about, right? Can he get the ball in their hands enough to have good statistical seasons? But Justin Jefferson, I think he bounces back.
Yeah, this has always been kind of a critique of Kyler Murray where it's been first read or scramble. And I wonder what you think about quarterbacks who are scrambling quarterbacks early in their career and where their running statistics go as they go along, because I was looking at just historically a handful of different running quarterbacks, and most of them, by the time they're getting into their late 20s, they are not putting up the same sort of numbers statistically in terms of rushing. And we even see that a little bit with Lamar, where last year Lamar was not running quite as much. Some of that could be just injury, but I feel like it's a tendency. So I wonder if you're asking Kyler in some ways to play more complete quarterback, which I think he did more in 2024 than he had ever done before. But it's kind of something that you have to imagine with Kyler Murray. You have to imagine him staying in the pocket longer. You have to imagine him really locking into Kevin O'Connell's system, which can be very complicated. And I was looking this up. Kirk Cousins only had an 83.9 quarterback rating in the first month where he played for Kevin O'Connell, and he did struggle at times to learn that offense. So if Kyler has some of the same bumps along the road, then it might, not get off to the fastest start in the world. So I don't know what you make of like the scrambling number, because usually you would project, maybe a little higher than this, but I also think it's reasonable because I don't think Kevin O'Connell's going to want him taking off all the time.
Yeah, no doubt. So I did look a little bit at that scramble rate for him. And if you look at like starting in 2022, 5.9% scramble rate, then 5.3, then up to 6.6. And then last year, smaller sample, but 8.3, he was scrambling a lot in his most recent action on the field. So I'm at 6.3%. So that's kind of actually in the middle of those four numbers. It's just kind of the way the numbers worked out. It's a formula for this sort of thing. So I think that's completely fair. It's well below where he was last saw him play extensively, and actually it's a little below where he was in 2024. So that's where I fall on that. I'm with you in terms of it dropping off a little bit, but I think that's just a part of his game. And he's, in terms of his ability, I think he's still in his prime. So I'm not really concerned about a drop off with the running just yet. So I think he ends up in that 400, 500 yard rushing yardage range, which again, not too aggressive, but not too conservative either.
Okay, let me just force you into a projection that doesn't exist. Let's say that Kyler Murray just loses this quarterback competition. He can't get O'Connell's offense down. They just don't like him. And they say, you know what? We're going to trade you to the Cleveland Browns, and JJ McCarthy is our starter. And let's just say that we put down, because McCarthy does get banged up a little bit at times, the same number of dropbacks. Let's just say pass attempts, 490 for JJ McCarthy. Where would your projection be for him if you were forced into that situation?
Yeah, it's tricky because I think the passing yardage could be higher because he can run a little bit, but he's not going to run as much. So it just leads to more, less, instead of him taking off and running, it's a dump off to Aaron Jones or maybe to TJ Hawkinson or maybe now Jawan Jennings. It gets more run in the short area. So I actually think the overall passing yardage number would be a little higher. Also, something to keep in mind, unless it's Murray just being horrendous, as long as it's like McCarthy comes in, plays well and wins this job, that makes you think, okay, this is first round guy a couple of years ago, maybe you could finally, and he came into the league young. That's always like, if you're on the McCarthy bandwagon, that gives you, some room for optimism. Obviously didn't see the field his first year, young player. That allows you to project this offense to take a step forward because you think this guy, if he won this job, he has to be playing better football, and that's a good sign. So, I would say uptick for the pass offense, probably down tick for the overall rushing offense, but a lot of that's designed runs and scrambles.
I think that's the right line of thinking. If McCarthy wins the job, the way that I've been putting it is that he has to do it beyond a reasonable doubt. It can't just be preponderance of the evidence. It has to be, he has to be way better than Kyler Murray. And if he's way better than Kyler Murray, who's been at least a good starter at times in the league, that means that there is a next step that's been taken that is pretty serious. So I would put that closer to 4,000 yards, closer to 25 touchdowns, and probably will still be pretty reckless with the ball and take some sacks and things like that. But I think that I would push that up quite a bit. Let's take a look at the backfield though here, because I think this is very interesting. So right now you've got pretty much a dead split between Aaron Jones and Jordan Mason. 740 yards for Jones, 748 for Jordan Mason, 170 to 162 in carries, 5 to 4 in terms of touchdowns, and a lot more receptions for Aaron Jones, which makes a ton of sense. I think that in a perfect world, Mike, Jordan Mason would run for 1,000 and Aaron Jones would get like 450. But I also know that coaches love players they trust. And Aaron Jones is the ultimate player that a coach trusts. So as you were breaking this one down, what was the thought process on a dead 50-50 split?
Yeah, it's a passing league. It's a passing league. And if you're Jordan Mason, you can be as effective as you want as a rusher. But if you're a non-contributor in passing situations, it's going to keep you off the field. He's a seasoned veteran at this point, and no team, no coordinator, nobody has trusted him in passing situations. And it's unfortunate because he's still, nearing the end of his prime, still in his prime at 27. And super effective as a rusher. I wrote this during the offseason, 5.1 yards per carry, 2.42 yards after contact in his career. That they rank third and second, respectively, among qualified running backs since he's been in the league. It's 350 plus carries in the sample. So he's been effective, but he has 34 career targets during that span. It's just not going to cut it. It's a reason why he's not appealing from a fantasy perspective, why he wasn't even really good in fantasy last year when Jones was out. And also, the carries weren't there either when Jones was healthy. They were still leaning pretty heavily on Jones as a rusher, which is why I have it basically an even split in terms of carries, but obviously a huge edge to Jones in the passing department right now. So, we're going to keep an eye on the rookie Claiborne to see if he can work his way into this. But you and I have talked already about this kind of off the airwaves. It's very surprising that they didn't invest more in this running back position. So for now, we just have to assume it's going to be Jones and Mason to start the season, and then if somebody misses time or is struggling, maybe they try to get Claiborne worked in and he could steal some work. But for now, it's probably that same 1-2 punch we saw last year.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about Mason is what's weird, you can see him in practice catching the ball and it looks fairly smooth, but when they do it in the game, I think he averaged like 3 yards a catch last year. They just have no interest in ever passing him the football. And maybe some of that was, McCarthy's average depth of target was way down the field last year because he just basically refused to ever check the ball down. That might be some of it, but the PFF pass blocking grades for Jordan Mason will melt your eyeballs. He was one of the worst in the entire NFL. And what I notice about Kevin O'Connell's offense is just in terms of snap counts where running backs have to pass block, they always have a ton. And this is why they couldn't keep Ty Chandler on the field. It's why they wouldn't put Kene Nwangwu out there. And even Damon Claiborne, he's not a big guy. And I don't know how much there's going to be trust there. Here's somebody you might have to add to your sheet is Xavier Scott, because he's 6'2", 220 pounds. He only had a handful of pass blocking reps last year, but he actually did pretty well. I wouldn't be even terribly shocked if he ends up on the field as the guy that they trust a little bit more just to pass protect. So it is a situation where you'd love to have Jordan Mason run the ball 250 times at 4.8 yards per carry and just be awesome. But if you're going to throw it, 500, 600 times, you probably just can't do that. The main story though is how many games can Aaron Jones play at his age? Yeah. Because it was interesting, Mike, he had a decent success rate last year, just no explosive runs, which isn't shocking. But he's been banged up both years. He was banged up back to 2023. So this could be a team actually that ends up getting to the trade deadline with a guy or two banged up and has to go acquire a running back.
Yeah, it's such a tricky spot because you have two guys, those two guys are set. Like Jones and Mason are going to have roles. So maybe they trade like a conditional 6 or 7 for Trey Benson, something like that. I mean, if you want to add someone in there, or it doesn't feel like a fit for like a James Conner necessarily, because what are you doing then? A 3-man rotation? It doesn't make sense. So I'm not sure what they're thinking here. It was a team that kind of maybe made sense for a little bit more of a draft investment or something like that. But I don't know. I could see like a Trey Benson sort of player being brought in, like a developmental player, because then if someone goes out, you have a little bit more firepower, a little bit more upside at the position. So we'll see. But very clearly, the future lead back of this team is not on the roster right now. And that's not, not ideal, but also it's one of the more replaceable positions in the NFL. So it's nothing I'm going to be too critical for in terms of roster construction.
And you played it very safe with Damon Claiborne, which I would. I follow a lot of fantasy people, and I keep seeing it pop up like, ooh, could this be the net? And I'm like, well, we got to have to wait and see. This is a 6th round draft pick. We said the same thing about Ty Chandler, and it didn't exactly work out. I am curious about your take on Jawan Jennings being a Minnesota Viking. I like the move a ton myself, but when a guy has 132 catches over the last 2 years and then ends up as a wide receiver 3 for the Vikings, just what was your read on that situation and what he can do here?
Excellent move by Minnesota, I thought, just to bring him in as a 3rd receiver. It also gives you some security if there's an injury at that position. So from that perspective, I like it a lot. Because you have uncertainty behind him. Like if it was Jefferson Addison, then you're looking at, Ty Felton, who maybe makes a leap as a 3rd rounder last year, but he hasn't shown it at this level yet. He just hasn't been asked to do it yet. Miles Price, I saw some Dylan Bell hype, so these guys are just unproven at this point. So bringing in a guy like Jennings is really good for the team and the offensive skill position just to strengthen it. But from his perspective, I mean, good luck seeing consistent volume. It's just not going to happen. I mean, Jefferson, we said, is going to be fed and what's going to be a low volume pass offense. Jordan Addison is still, obviously, I like him a lot. He's going to be a huge part of this offense. And I like to think TJ Hawkinson, now, what is he, 2 years off the injury? Like to get him going offensively a little bit with it. But again, there's just not if this was Matthew Stafford or even Jared Goff or like a pocket quarterback leading this team, it might be a different story where you're like, all right, I could see Jennings sneaking in there and putting up quietly a good season as a 3. We've seen it before in the NFL, but it's just not the case. It's a quarterback. You have questions about efficiency at that position. And certainly it's a running quarterback, which is going to limit the output as well. So I think Jennings will be a valuable Viking. I don't think he's going to be a guy that's stuffed in the box score.
The only thing I could see is just that Kyler in his most recent iteration is a very much quick game underneath, not afraid to check the ball down. And maybe some of that's just his best player. That's what I tend to think, is that his best player was his tight end. But that might really benefit TJ Hawkinson and Jawan Jennings as guys who they can find a little space in between, the zones or a little, underneath type of route. And then yards after catch, Jennings is pretty good with that. But I agree with you. Like there's only so many targets to go around. And if you're going to have 3 guys ahead of Jawan Jennings, he's probably not going to end up with a huge total. I think he could help a lot in the run game from his blocking, but yeah, not exactly on the fantasy side. So did you have more on that, or do you want to go?
I was just thinking about let's say we're 5-6 weeks into the season and Jawan Jennings is just stacking up stats. People are going to be mad. I mean, that's not good. It's like Justin Jefferson's miserable. Addison's doing nothing. Hawkins, it's just not going to work. Like you don't want that.
Right.
You don't want, I mean, look, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's because McCarthy's the quarterback and he makes a big leap and this offense is lighting it up. But I think the reality is if Jawan Jennings is doing really well statistically, there's probably something wrong, whether it's a Jefferson injury or if the connection's poor, whatever it is. I think you want Jennings in a role as a role player this year, if you will.
Yeah, totally. On the defensive side, and this is what I love so much about your projections, is you project all the way down to how many tackles Bo Richter is going to have, which is just, I need this. I'm not even joking. It's fantastic. But the number that stuck out to me was projected sacks, only 38.5. I mean, when it comes to losing Javon Hargrave and Jonathan Allen, that's significant. Those guys did create a lot of pressure. And of course, Jonathan Grenard. I also, having watched Brian Flores do Brian Flores things, tend to think that there's no way they could have less than 50 sacks or whatever. I mean, what did they have last year? 47 or something like usually they're pretty good at finding ways to spread the sack production around quite a bit. So what's the feeling on like Caleb Banks trying to project him, Dallas Turner, because you kind of have to take some leaps of faith here with guys that have not yet proven it in the NFL.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Not certainly for players who have very little experience or are rookies. I'm using trends based on draft capital and where they're playing on the field. So that's really all you can do. You can't just assume a player's a superstar or a player's a bust. You have to use some trends because look, half of the first round is going to be bust this year, maybe more so because it was not a great draft this year. So that's how I figured that out. You're right. Losing Grenard was a pretty big one as well. Also sacks are a lot of that is the quarterbacks you're facing too. So I don't have a game by game in front of me. I mean, look, I can look at the schedule and work through it. We don't have time to do that at that level, but it could be part of it. Just they play a lot of quarterbacks that don't generally take a lot of sacks too, so, Detroit's on there obviously twice, like Jared Goff, again, I'm not going to go through all of them, but the point is that's a factor here. And of course the personnel changes defensively are a factor as well. So you're right. Coaching can always be tricky, or like obviously a plus in the Vikings case, but sacks are so volatile too. It's such a tough category to project. So, I still have Van Ginkel, Turner with 7+. I have Eric Wilson with a handful actually I'm looking at the wrong columns here. What do I got? Oh, 6+ for Van Ginkel and Turner. Wilson down to 4 this year. Obviously some from Banks and Redmond inside. So solid numbers, but again, sacks I'm always going to be conservative with because it is a tough category.
I mean, I could see them having a team leader in sacks be like 7 or 8 if Dallas Turner doesn't take a huge step, but then they have like 9 guys that have somewhere between 3 and 5 because that's just Brian Flores's type of defense. In terms of, let me first, traditionally, when you've come on the show, I like to nitpick one guy sort of
Please.
as a little bit of, not super serious, but just like, I don't know, to get at you a little. I wonder about if we're going to see more of Charles Demings than we think here, because here's why. So one, he went to Stephen F. Austin. So there's not a lot of hype around him. Nobody was drafting FCS players. It was like the NFL tuned out FCS altogether. But his athleticism was absolutely insanely freakish coming out. Looked very good in minicamp. And they have no other real depth here. Where they've been super lucky is Byron Murphy has been healthy every year. Isaiah Rodgers was completely healthy. And I like where you've got James Pierre. I think he's going to actually play quite a bit, 640 snaps. But you've only got 53 for Charles Demings. If one guy gets hurt, I think we're going to see young Charles Demings.
Okay. I can totally buy it because they're kind of unproven that position. These projections are built for essentially 17 games, unless there's something obvious, like a guy's going to start on PUP, or in the case of the quarterbacks, like I projected a start or 2 for McCarthy. But yeah, I mean, if they're healthy, expect to see the same guys as last year, at least at the top with Murphy and Rodgers. But I can see it. Again, it's just unproven commodities. I will say this though, rookie corners in general are often low output. But a 5th round pick, a day 3 flyer, asking a lot. I mean, those guys don't always like usually a 5th rounder will sneak onto the roster, but a lot of times those guys won't make much of an impact. So that's why he's so low. But if there was an opportunity here, certainly it would be in Minnesota, where they're lacking depth a little bit.
I was reaching for one there. But I really do like what I see from Demings. And the other one is that I'm interested in, I don't know if you're going to be wrong or right here, is the snap counts between Theo Jackson and Jay Ward. We just don't really know. Right now, it looks like Theo Jackson's going to play a lot, but it looked that way last year. And then that kind of faded as the season went along because they were a little disappointed. And I did mean to circle back to Max Bredeson's carries. 2 makes sense. 5 catches for 29 yards, I think would be pretty good. I think they're going to play him a lot, Mike. I actually do think that they're going to play him a lot. I think it is Kevin O'Connell's goal this year, and I don't know if he'll stick with it, to actually kind of play some more bully ball. They bring in the offensive coordinator from the Dolphins. They changed offensive line coaches. I think he wants to be tougher. I think he wants to focus on the run. And I think he also knows that if you try to have Kyler Murray throw 600 passes, it's probably not going to work out for you.
Yeah. I get it. But here's the thing. Bredesen, if it was CJ Ham, the numbers would be higher, probably about double, right? And I don't want to disrespect CJ Ham by projecting some rookie to have similar numbers. Like, I'm not going to disrespect a legend like Ham like that. So, again, it's a day 3 rookie. Expect him to be brought on. They're going to work him in, but I don't think this offense is going to be built around getting the ball in his hands like it was. When CJ Ham was there, you had to make him a factor in this offense. But we'll see. I could totally see these numbers being a little bit higher, but I'm not getting too carried away.
What would June be like if we weren't arguing for day 3 picks making a serious impact in the actual season? Last thing for you, Mike. The over-under on FanDuel for this team is 8.5. Your projection has them with just 7.5 wins, which would not be an acceptable season for the Minnesota Vikings. So why are you going with the under?
Yeah, it's a tough division. It's a tough conference. It's some parts of it. Certainly the NFC West, is totally stacked. I think even the NFC East is a little bit better. And then within the division themselves, I think the Lions were bit very hard by the injury bug, especially in the secondary last year. And that really 2 years in a row, that's kind of cost them pretty badly. So I do think the Lions bounce back. The Packers are very solid. The Bears are, I guess I'm probably not quite as high on them as some other people are. I need a little bit more out of Caleb Williams, but Bears are at least going to be in that 500 range, probably maybe a little better than that. So that's really the problem, is the division right now is very strong. And when you look at the quarterbacks and the how solid teams are in terms of their passing game, Vikings very clearly third on that list. They just don't have a proven commodity at the quarterback position. And we saw that could bite you last year, and it very well could happen again this year. Even if they get an okay season out of Kyler, I don't know if it's going to be enough with some of the losses they've had as well. So that's the bottom line. I just don't know if this is the year, but I hope they're just good enough that O'Connell sticks around and they find that quarterback in the future, because I like him a lot. I don't think they should make the mistake of moving on just because it hasn't happened yet. Let's find him a good quarterback, and I think it'll be a successful next 10 years for Minnesota. Maybe not this year, maybe not next year, but after that could be pretty good.
The way I look at all projections for the Vikings in terms of their win total is basically, why would anyone put them with so much quarterback uncertainty and defensive uncertainty, which isn't being mentioned a lot, but they lost about 100 pressures between those 3 players. Why would anyone at this time of year project the Vikings to be better than teams that have so much more solid, repeatable quarterbacks, coaches, just rosters in general, like Detroit, like Green Bay, who's always a 10 or 11 win team? They have, I think, no benefit of the doubt in the situation that they're in, especially after what happened last year. So they will have to prove it to us, Mr. Clay. Well, look, the best way to, at least how I do it every time, to find your projections is I just Google Mike Clay projections, and it comes up this monster PDF. If you're a fantasy player or you're just interested in data in general, projecting every single player, I can spend all day scrolling through what you're thinking about different players. So I appreciate you coming on. And if people already don't follow you on Twitter, it's Mike Clay NFL. Thank you, sir. It always pays off to have you on in June. Always one of my favorite discussions of the year. So thanks for doing this.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Always fun. And I'm going to get back to reviewing books now. So I'll let you know how the end of this one goes.
All right. We'll definitely do it again soon, man. Thanks.
Sounds great. Take care.
All right, Mike Clay there. He is the best. Love having him on. Love going through his projections. So I'm going to recap a couple of his projections here for you guys, and then we'll get into the chat, have a good conversation. And then in the second hour of the show, I have some predictions. Doing a lot of that this week. So I'm putting together some Vikings ones for a little later in the week, but I'm also doing a series over on the newsletter, purpleinsider.football, where I'm looking at every single team, writing a little essay about every team, and then making a prediction. So I'm going to bring you some of the predictions, and hopefully you'll go over to purpleinsider.football and check out the entire articles. But just to recap some of Mike Clay's projections for Kyler Murray. And I want you guys to jump in the chat right now. Tell me what you think of these, but also any other questions and comments. Definitely does not have to be just about Mike's projections, for sure. Anything that's on your mind that's football-y, we could talk about it. But let me run through just real quick if you didn't catch the exact projections. Kyler Murray with 3,345 yards, 19 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, and 443 yards rushing. Aaron Jones and Jordan Mason split almost equally from 170 carries for Aaron Jones with 740 yards, 47 receptions. I think if that's what Aaron Jones brings to the table for the Vikings, that would be an amazing year. And Jordan Mason, 162 carries for 748 yards with essentially no impact in the receiving game at all. And for Jefferson, Addison, Jennings, and Hockenson, 111 receptions for Jefferson, 60 for Addison, 46 for Jennings, and 78 for TJ Hockenson. So let's go through each and what it would mean just real quick here. With Kyler Murray, if he played like this, he's not the long-term quarterback. It's that simple. And Mike was projecting them as an 8-win type of team. And I think a lot of that is tied back to a very safe projection for Kyler Murray. I mean, it's hard to know, right? When you have a new quarterback, what are they going to do? I mean, I go back to us trying to project Sam Darnold, and we would always go kind of down the middle with a Sam Darnold projection. Like, hey, what if he threw for 24 touchdowns, like 14 picks? Like, that would be okay, right? And then he ends up going for 35 touchdowns. Like, whoever saw that coming? So as I've gone through the Kyler Murray tape and I've looked at the numbers and all those things, I've set the bar a little higher for Kyler Murray than this, or kind of across the board. I've set the bar much more at about 36 to 3,800 yards passing, if not even a little bit more than that, because Kevin O'Connell is his coach. More like 25 to 30 touchdowns if he plays the entire season. This is if he plays 17 games. You never know whether someone is going to or not. As I've mentioned on the show, Kyler played 30 games in a row from 2023 until 2025, and then, had another injury. 10 interceptions. Interceptions are weird and difficult. He usually is in around that ballpark. And then I think that 440 yards rushing is about right, because I do believe that Kevin O'Connell is going to not only want Kyler Murray to stay in the pocket a little bit more, but also just give him better answers than first read and scramble. So as he learns the offense, as he starts to really pick it up, I don't think there are as many times where you're going to see Kyler take the snap, kind of just turn it down, and then decide to take off. Although I do want to point out that when he scrambles, he averages almost 9 yards per carry. So even if he does that, it can be pretty effective. But this season right here, not even reaching 3,400 yards, not even reaching 20 touchdowns, not reaching 500 yards rushing. This probably gets you to 7 or 8 wins. And if you play like this at some point, we'll probably be saying just play JJ McCarthy. Like, if the season plays out the way that Mike Clay is projecting it, at some point we would reach it might be better to just see if there's something there for the future. But I think that shows you how high the bar is for Kyler Murray to remain the Vikings starting quarterback really all season. You have to be in the race. You have to be competing for a playoff spot. You have to be competing for the division all season long for Kyler to stay as the quarterback for the entire year. And then in terms of him being the franchise quarterback, multi-year quarterback, I think that number has to push near 4,000, 36 to 4,000, and then somewhere in the 25 touchdown to 30 touchdown range, 500 yards rushing. I think he's got to be really good in order for the Vikings to say this is truly worth it, not just a one-year patchwork solution to make sure that we can be competitive. As far as the backfield, I would like to see Jordan Mason get much more than this. I would like to see Jordan Mason around 210 carries. I know that he's not the biggest all-around back in the NFL. I know that the pass protection is going to be an issue with Jordan Mason. I don't know how much you can work on it at this point in someone's career. Maybe it can get better, but with the run game that they're talking about, with Frank Smith, with the bigger personnel, with a fullback, with Josh Oliver on this team, like, they've done a lot. Jawan Jennings, they have done a lot to create a very physical team. Darisaw coming back, Donovan Jackson, Will Fries was paid a lot of money. Like, the funny thing is, or I guess the ironic thing is about Kevin O'Connell's reputation being that he can't run the football effectively, is that they have, from a roster perspective, done a lot to try to make sure that happens. I mean, they re-sign Josh Oliver last year. Fries was a really great run blocker in Indianapolis, was not as great of a pass protector, but that's why you go get him, so he can plow people, right? You draft a guard in the first round. Like, your center is 6'7" and 320 pounds. Like, you're trying to move people, and then you draft a fullback. Like, they've done a lot. So if you're going to do all that, then give the ball to Jordan Mason. And there were definitely times last year where I'm just tearing my hair out a little bit with it's 2nd down and 1 at the goal line against Philadelphia. This is why you got the guy. So if Kevin O'Connell can shift that mindset, I mean, it's really going to be tested because they've got all the pieces to do it. So I'd like to see 200 carries for Jordan Mason, dialed back for Aaron Jones, be more efficient and more healthy for Aaron Jones, and more Jordan Mason getting the ball. I also think that if Kyler Murray connects with Justin Jefferson like this, then there's going to be a case for him as the longer term quarterback because they're going to win. Like, that's the interesting thing about the projection is I don't think that this projection is enough for Murray to be the long-term quarterback. But then I look at the receivers and go, well, that's where the bar should be set for them. And if they all perform to that level, 111 for Jefferson, almost 1,400 yards, Addison 60 for 700 something yards. I mean, if these things happen, then Murray is distributing the ball extremely well, and they might have a chance to win a lot of games. So it's kind of funny that, I think the total that he's got for Murray's not good enough. But when I look at the receivers, okay, it should look something like this. So let's get to your reaction, and random questions are also very, very welcome. They're very welcome all the time, but especially on June 22nd. So let's fire it up. First question in the chat, Axton says, why would we try to get Sorsby? We already have enough projects. So I did talk about that a lot the other night. And the short answer is this. And I wrote a column about it after I did the show. That happens a lot because my wheels are turning. So then I'll write something at purpleinsider.football. And you know what I came up with about Brendan Sorsby for the Vikings? The best argument for the Vikings to put in for some draft capital into the supplemental draft, at least to roll the dice and give it a shot to get Brendan Sorsby. You know what the best argument I had is how dare you not? Like, if you're the Minnesota Vikings and you have been trying to find a franchise quarterback since Fran Tarkenton, and they've come and go, and it's been Tommy Kramer for a little bit, and then he has injuries. It's been Culpepper for a little bit, and it's Bridgewater for a little bit, and it's Darnold for a year, and it's Keenum for a year, and it's Kirk for a little bit. You have been stumbling through this quarterback position for so long. How dare you not take a shot at finding a quarterback, even if the odds aren't super high? And even if there's this gigantic red flag around the guy, well, I mean, it's a red flag, but it's not some of the other red flags of people who have come out into the NFL that the Vikings or other teams have taken risks on because they're talented. I've watched a little Brendan Sorsby since the conversation came up. Great athlete. He's really big, doesn't take sacks. He also does not have a lot of turnover worthy plays. Like, he played a lot of good football last year. I don't know if he's going to be good or not, but if you're the Vikings, how could you make any argument that, like, oh, we don't need that guy. We don't need to take a look at that guy. Now, if they came back and in their research and they said, this is horrifying and we don't want this person in our building. Okay, I get it. I'm good. All right, fine. But if you do your research and you find, okay, the guy's got a disease and he's having it treated, and the rest of the stuff is good. Leadership, the way that he acted around his team, everything else. He just had this gambling problem as a young guy. Well, I mean, there's worse things for sure that have happened with college players, and they have gone on to have really good careers. I use the Tyrann Mathieu example of literally getting kicked out of LSU. He goes in the 4th round. He becomes a superstar, borderline Hall of Famer. Like, people grow up sometimes, and he's going to have the resources to deal with his issue. But I just can't see why the Vikings, a team that has no quarterback answer in 2027, wouldn't at least want to look into this. And then, well, how will they handle it? Well, they had Daniel Jones here. They had JJ McCarthy here. They had Sam Darnold here. I mean, 4 quarterbacks, one of them, you're not developing at all in Carson Wentz. I just don't think it's that crowded. So I think they should put in for it. I would go 4th round pick at the absolute maximum, and I'll be very curious to see how it plays out. But man, when you have had no success whatsoever at finding a long-term quarterback, can you really be the team that says, no, we're too good for that? David says, also think the money aspect of Will Reichard may lend to O'Connell to run legitimately more inside the 50, which, as you know, O'Connell has done the least among any play caller during his tenure. Absolutely. Yeah, and that's a good argument for it with the fact that, see, when you said money and Will Reichard, I thought we were going to talk about his future contract, because I really do wonder what the best kicker in the league is going to ask for money-wise. But in terms of his actual ability, Will Reichard is the best kicker in the National Football League. He's probably tied with 2 or 3 other guys, Cameron Dicker, Brandon Aubrey. They are right there for the best of the best. And with the way that they allowed the footballs to be super duper inflated last year, if they're going to continue with that, which I haven't heard anything to the contrary, then you can produce points every single time you get over the 40-yard line. I mean, you're good. You get to the 40, Will Reichard's going to knock it down. So you might be more apt, I agree, to get to the 40-yard line and run the football a little more with Jordan Mason and see what you can get on a 2nd and 7 with Mason, as opposed to feeling like if we don't score a touchdown, it's over. And the other thing too that O'Connell mentioned, and I think it went under the radar, but it really stuck with me, was that last year it hit home with him when they won the game against the Lions. Oh yeah, we're allowed to win ugly. We're allowed to win not the way I want to win, because we know the way he wants to win. Kevin O'Connell wants to win with 325 yards from his quarterback, 4 touchdowns, and then a dagger on 3rd and 1 to end the game where he throws a 50-yard touchdown. Like, that's how he wants to win, because they won the Super Bowl with the Los Angeles Rams with Matthew Stafford pushing 5,000 yards. They threw the heck out of the ball. But things change. And not only that, you don't have Matthew Stafford. You have Kyler Murray and you have JJ McCarthy. So the fact that Reichard is there and they can trust that they've got points, and with a relatively less experienced defense, maybe you want to try to keep him off the field a little bit more, which I'm sure bothered Brian Flores at times. Like, really? You're throwing again? And that's going to get us a quick 3 and out. No time off the clock. Nobody's getting worn down on the defensive side. And then the defense has to run back out there for the Vikings. Will he commit to it? Will he stick with that? Because it doesn't always work. I mean, when you look at the Seahawks' success rate running the ball, it's not that great last year. But you know what it did? And I think that really needs to be considered by the analytics people and everybody else, is it severely reduced the number of times that Sam Darnold had to drop back on 3rd and long. That's what Clint Kubiak was aiming for, is how do we get Sam Darnold to not have to drop back at 3rd and 8, 3rd and 12, 3rd and 10. And that's when he takes a lot of his sacks, and that's when he tries to do too much, right? Well, Kyler Murray, I looked this up. Kyler Murray was legitimately good on 3rd and short and legitimately terrible on 3rd and long. So if you could kind of get that through your head a little bit of, yeah, this might not be the most efficient play, but it's going to set up a situation which is favorable for us, we could see more of that. Now, I'm not saying that they should just run on 2nd and 10 all the time, but to your point, if you're in scoring position, you don't have to do something that could turn the ball over. You don't have to do something that might be risky and might get you sacked out of field goal position or something when you know that your kicker can make it. Axton says, here's a discussion question after Mike Clay. Do you really think that Damon Claiborne will turn out to be something special as opposed to another Ty Chandler? So there's 2 minds that I have of that. Number one is that a lot of running backs did not have to be drafted in the 1st round or the 2nd round to turn out to be very good players. If they had acceleration, if they had quickness, if they had toughness, if they had an all-around capability to catch the football, then at very least you can find a role as a 6th rounder because you've got all those skills. And maybe going to Wake Forest didn't really help him the most in terms of his draft capital. It's possible, or draft stock. It is possible that if Damon Claiborne had transferred to Alabama or something, that he would have been, I don't know, a 3rd round draft pick. He's a little bit undersized. He has some very, very impressive quickness. When you see it, you know it. Like, this is fast. But Ty Chandler was the same thing, and that's a good point. And so is Kenny Nwangwu, and they never really convince themselves that those guys should be on the field a lot. So I think it's better to say, we'll see on Damon Claiborne. He is going to have to prove it. They're going to have to prove it. And if we're doing a projection, I wouldn't give him 100 carries this year. I'd probably give him like 20 carries this year. But you never know with running backs. Like, I love the idea of rolling the dice on day 3 on running backs, because there's just enough of them that have had success from that area of the draft. And I think that there's reasons why this guy in particular hovered under the radar a little bit. And I loved to hear that he and Aaron Jones are working out together in Florida during this time. That, immediately this shows you why Aaron Jones is back, what a great teammate he is. He's taken him under his wing and saying like, hey, I'm going to help you out as much as I possibly can. Well, if he takes that direction, you never know how it could break out. But the running back position could be very random when it's not a first or a second round draft pick of who shows up. Bucky Irving is a good example recently of, this guy had a terrible combine and had all these bad numbers. And then, he's good at football. Who knew? Kind of happens all the time, right? Joker, I'm worried KO using the run game will be like buying a Bowflex. It's all there and it works as designed, but after 2 weeks, it never gets used and becomes a coat rack. You always live up to your name, Joker, with that, but I get what you're saying, and that will be the true challenge. It will be the true challenge for Kevin O'Connell is, can you stick with it through it not working? And another part of it is losing Ryan Wright, who was flipping the field like crazy last year and keeping them in games with his leg. They don't have that. Johnny Hekker has not been as good as Ryan Wright in recent years. That may play into it as well. The defense last year at the end of the season, that stretch was just so outstanding that they could win games by leaning a lot on the run game. That's not always going to be the case. There are going to be a lot of instances where you have to outscore the other team in some kind of shootout, and you're playing the NFC North, and you've got 3 quarterbacks that are capable of putting up 30 points. We've seen Caleb Williams have a great day against the Vikings. We've seen Jared Goff have many of them over the years, not last year, but over the years we've seen it. And we've also seen Jordan Love, go toe to toe with Brian Flores at times as well. So there are going to be games where, you can't just do this thing where you lean on the run all the time, but the true test will be a week where it doesn't work. Will you stay with it? Will you stick with the run? Because that's always been an issue. The Vikings, here's a crazy stat for you. The Vikings in 2024, before Christian Darrisaw got hurt, Aaron Jones was averaging 5.1 yards per carry. They were running the ball very successfully in the first part of that season. It's one of the reasons that Sam Darnold got off to such a hot start in that year. After he got hurt, it went downhill. And I don't think that was KOC's fault. Aaron Jones got banged up as well. Darrisaw is such a dominant run blocker. And we have to also acknowledge that injuries on the O-line, lack of greatness in the backfield has played into Kevin O'Connell not trusting the run. But there were times during the 2024 season where even in the beginning of the year where they're running the ball really well and they're up in the game and they're just, you know what, let's just take one more shot to the end zone. Let's just drop back on 3rd and 15 and try to convert it here when we're winning a game and our defense is playing great. Like, that's the maturity that you'd like to see from a play caller of, all right, today is the day, or this is the time in the game where we pull the chute and we slow it down and we play for pace and we try to drag as much time off the clock and we trust Brian Flores' defense. That is what I would like to see more of. And I thought that last year when he was forced to do it, he did do it more. Against Dallas would be a good example. They won some games where they did kind of ground and pound much more late into a game. So we'll see, because there have been other stretches where I remember saying it after the Atlanta Falcons win in 2024, because they were up and they got the ball back. I think maybe this was a Cam Bynum interception late in the game. And for whatever reason, they put the ball at like the 1 yard line. And they just grounded and pounded pretty much the entire way down the field to close out that game. And I thought, he's got it. And then, it actually didn't turn out that way. Bruno says all 4 teams are close. Unfortunately, like last year, injuries will play a big role. Totally right. And that's why this time of year is both fun and also a little bit frustrating when we're trying to make these predictions and projections, because it's like, okay, let's look at all 4 teams on paper in the NFC North. And then at the end, you come to the conclusion, man, all 4 of these are good. But what it's going to come down to is when they play each other. I mean, the Vikings starting out the season with 2 games against the NFC North, and then having those games potentially dictate whether you get in the playoffs or not. Like, that seems both really intense and kind of awesome from a football enjoying standpoint, but from a, like, do you really want that? Or would you like your team to get into the swing of things and not have the most random week of the year, week 1, be against the Green Bay Packers, right? And week 2, then, you're right in Chicago. It's like, whoa, what is going on here? So that part of the schedule could end up meaning a lot all of the sudden right out of the gate. And then, as you said, like, a lot of it comes down to injuries and who can stay healthy. Because had the Vikings stayed healthy last year, I think they would have survived some games. And I'll always wonder what would have happened if McCarthy had come back against Cincinnati and then just gotten his confidence going by beating Cincinnati and then gone overseas. You play a Pittsburgh defense that wasn't perfect. Maybe you get a win instead of a loss there, and everything shapes out a little bit differently for JJ McCarthy. But instead, the injuries there, the injuries on the O-line, the injuries to the defense. At the end of the year, the defense is playing great. Why? Because it's healthy and it looked awesome, but it wasn't for the early part of the season, and they struggled a lot. Leonard says Chandler may do better elsewhere. Yeah, he's going to be in New Orleans this year, and I'll be keeping an eye out for him. I don't know if we're going to see a lot of Ty Chandler, but would it shock me if Ty Chandler for the New Orleans Saints, I looked up and he had like 600 yards at 5.2 yards per carry or something? It would not shock me, because he always had the ability to run the football with a lot of natural instinct and explosiveness. Last year, he got banged up, and maybe last year would have been the year he would have gotten his chance. That's why they ended up playing Xavier Scott, because Aaron Jones and Jordan Mason both had different times where they were banged up, and maybe Chandler would have gotten that chance, but he got hurt on that first kick return, right? It was the first night of the season, and he had a kick return where he got hurt and then was out for a really long time. So again, injuries sort of getting in the way of everything in football. Moral, look at Clay's projection. If you can't figure out who to play in fantasy, he is the best, man. He is just so good at this. He spends so much time on it. He really cares. And, that fantasy universe, the reason I like talking to people who are on the fantasy side is because it's just a different way of looking at things. Like, I'm always getting into X's and O's, granular details, like down to the finest, level of Max Bredeson's role, and if he's going to be at this position or that position. And those guys are much better at projecting how people are going to do than I am, which is, I don't know, like, shouldn't I be better at it? But in general, like, they're better because that's what they do all the time. It's kind of like the gambling folks, where they are better at picking games than I am. I'm not good at picking games at all over the years for the Vikings, and yet I'm good at breaking down what happened after the game, but just going into the game, I've never been great at, or any better than anybody else at picking out what was going to happen. Let's see. Justin, I truly feel the Vikings can win the division, maybe more. Just got to stay healthy as possible. They absolutely can. They have the roster to do it. They have the coaching to do it. They have the offense, the weapons, and I think they have the quarterback to do it. But it's only in a world where you have to kind of imagine it, right? And that was the joke that I used to make about Kirk Cousins, the imagination land quarterback, where it's like, imagine if they had 30 more million in cap space. Imagine if Kirk could scramble. Imagine if he was consistent, right? And the same thing is happening for Kyler Murray. Now, the reason it's different is because Kirk played for the Minnesota Vikings. And before he played for the Vikings, he played for, well, not a great franchise, a great coach in Mike Shanahan and Sean McVay. And, that's a great situation in Washington. And he made the most of it there to earn his spot in Minnesota. But they had so many weapons there, Deshaun Jackson and Pierre Garçon and Vernon Davis, that when he was coming to Minnesota, you couldn't really say, well, it's going to be a lot better here than it was there, because they had great coaching and they had great weapons. Whereas I can't say the same for Arizona. I can't say, wow, Arizona's been great, so who knows what we're going to get from Murray. Arizona wasn't anywhere close to the players that we've named in terms of their weapons, and Jawan Jennings would have been their wide receiver 1 last year. So Trey McBride's great, but they did not play great on the offensive line last year. 2024 they did. They could run the ball, and they committed to the run quite a bit in 2024. But as far as weapons go, as far as coaching, as far as franchise stability, all that sort of stuff, the support that he had from the building, from the ownership, I mean, it just, is nowhere close. And he didn't have Justin Jefferson. And I think Jefferson is a slightly better receiver than DeAndre Hopkins was, but he is better, and Hopkins was good. That's when Murray was at his best. So when you're trying to do that sort of imagination, you can at least back it up with Kyler Murray, and you could see a very clear scenario where they win 11 or 12 games. And I was looking this up, and this should give you the bar, because I looked it up a while ago, maybe 2 years ago, and I've sort of continued to go back to this stat about like how good do you need to be a Super Bowl team in terms of wins? And the answer remains 11. I was looking up the last 10 years of teams that went to the Super Bowl, and I believe only one went to the Super Bowl with 10 wins. Everybody else has had 11. So if you go into the playoffs with 11 wins, then you are a serious team that can contend. And that's where the bar should be set for Kyler Murray, is get this team to 11 wins. And Kevin O'Connell, of course. Bruno, 400 yards rushing for Murray would be amazing. I think 400 plus would be good. He had over 500 in Arizona in 2024. And if you think about like what's 500 yards per game spread over 17, I can't do the math in my head, but somewhere like 30, 40 yards a game would be great. Like that's 2 or 3 big scrambles. And you think about the difference there between having a pocket quarterback and having someone that just gives you that 1 or 2 extra first downs. I remember this crazy number in 2022 that Daniel Jones, who did a lot of running in that year, I think he ran for like 700 yards. I remember him having more first down runs than Dalvin Cook, which just tells you what the quarterback position could do when there's a scrambling element. And we have not seen that here. I mean, Case Keenum, JJ can run and he can get some first downs, but it's not like this. And the same thing for Case Keenum, who could scramble around. But running for Vikings quarterbacks, you have to go back to Dante Culpepper for the last time that they had a running quarterback, and then a scrambler, playmaker, and running quarterback. I guess you could say, Fran Tarkenton. I've had a few of the OGs of Vikings land ask me, like, does this guy remind you of Fran Tarkenton? And the answer is a little bit. And the reason you would say a little bit is that Tarkenton, for a big portion of his career, played for bad teams. One of them was the Minnesota Vikings when they first came into the NFL. And then the New York Giants weren't a great franchise either. And then he arrives back in Minnesota when they're turning the corner as a franchise, and then becomes one of the great quarterbacks in history. So there is that. Bruno, 3,000 yards is not amazing. No, I mean, if he only throws for 3,300 yards, anyone can do that. You could get pretty much 3,300 yards, 19 touchdowns, 10 picks, and 400 yards rushing is just not special. That's something that you could get pretty much anywhere. And it does, you're right, Joker, it does sound like a lot of checkdowns, which he was throwing a lot underneath over the last few years, but nothing happens in a bubble, right? These all have context. If the only player that you trust on your offense is the tight end, you're going to throw under 10 yards a lot. And the other thing too, I was looking at average depth of targets, and it's not a real predictive stat for success for quarterbacks. Like there are quarterbacks who have high average depth of targets, who push the ball downfield like Sam Darnold. And then, Joe Burrows was one of the shortest in the league, but he's got the yak monster in Jamar Chase, and he's really good at just executing their offense and not being overly aggressive. And Kyler Murray was much more toward the Joe Burrow level of like underneath passing a lot, but if it's on point, and his completion percentages have been high, so if it's successful, well then, there's no problem with that. You have to have that tool in your bag to go down the field, and we love when people go down the field. But even when Kirk was here, I believe it was maybe 11 or 10% of his passes went over 20 yards. Like 9 out of every 10 passes that Kirk Cousins threw were under 20 yards. And that's most of the league, is somewhere around that ballpark. It's not a lot of deep bombs downfield. Brian says, I agree that Murray will have more yards and touchdowns. I think if he plays 17 games, then he's got to have more than that. He's got to have more than 3,300 yards and 19 touchdowns. If he doesn't, then it was not a success and they didn't make the playoffs. They need Kyler Murray to be a borderline star quarterback. Not a mega star, not untouchable, not Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen combined, but they need him to play like a star quarterback in this division. You can't just sort of roll the ball out there and win the NFC North. Hunter, no, it's not 9 o'clock yet, where things get weird. Your girlfriend moving to Rochester at the end of the summer, Rochester, New York. Any suggestions or what to do or where to get food? Rochester, New York, I spent a lot of time there when I was in college. That's the area where I went to college. And it's not a big place, so I would say that. But in terms of Buffalo, and Rochester, they're very, very close together. So the food, the pizza and wings, all that stuff is just as good in Rochester as it is in Buffalo. So I hope that she's a big fan of that kind of food. And aside from that, I mean, the Little Theater. Tell your girlfriend to find and enjoy the Little Theater. Spent a lot of time there with the wife when we were both in college. Give it a shot. It's a great town. It's just not like the Twin Cities or something. It's not like enormous. Justin, I can see, and a Red Wings game and an Amerks game, the minor league stuff. Justin, I could see Murray hitting around 4,000 passing yards if he plays all the games. I can too. I mean, maybe I'm leaning too much on 2024 Arizona, but he threw for a lot of yards in 2024. They used him a lot. I mean, he was really their whole offense in 2024, passed the ball a ton and also ran it a good amount as well. So it's not really crazy for, if that happens. Bruno says these stats are for Murray playing 14 games and 4 injured is still possible. Yeah, no, that's true. That's true. Right. But even if that's it, is that he only gets to those numbers through 14 games, is that good enough to get you there? I mean, yardage wise, that's going to help make it closer. But I mean, I think also playing a high portion of the season, if you get that kind of quarterback play, my point is that I don't think you're talking about, hey, this guy is our franchise quarterback. I think that this guy is going to get us, 12 wins. There's something like that's not how the conversation would be happening with Vikings fans if those are the numbers Kyler put up over 14 games. Or 17 games or whatever it is. I mean, that's just not going to do it. It's got to be more than that in order to be really good. Son of Beavers, more passing yards for also 24 to 33 passing yards touchdowns for Murray, 24 to 32 touchdowns, less rushing yards for Jones, more yards for Jennings, but less for Hawkinson, also Addison for 1,000 plus. So one by one there, I think total touchdowns, Murray's never been a guy who usually throws 30 touchdowns, but could he get to a total? What was it in 2024? I think he had maybe 29 total touchdowns. I think he ran for 5 and threw 24, something like that. It was very close. It was close to 30 total. So total, yeah, I could see it being that. And in terms of rush yards, I agree. I don't think you can run Aaron Jones as much to be a 50-50 split. I think it's going to have to lean a little more on Jordan Mason. I'd like to see that. More yards for Jennings. I don't know. I mean, because you can't get the ball to absolutely everybody all the time. And I think that Hawkinson will be a really good weapon for Kyler Murray. He's such a high IQ player. He's very, very good at seeing defenses, reading defenses, and getting into tight spaces. So I wonder if he will lean on Hawkinson, but I thought that the Jennings projection was pretty fair. 46 catches. I mean, I think he's going to be a guy that they go to on third down, which he was really big in San Francisco with that. And there's going to be some possession elements of his game, but I don't know that he's going to be someone that they're leaning heavily on unless there's an injury. And if Addison gets over 1,000 yards, then we're talking about that big contract extension coming up. Bathroom Remodel says, I'd rather see McCarthy than Kyler if those are his numbers. I think that's completely fair. I do. And that's really what we're talking about with if Kyler Murray is kind of en route to putting up those numbers or maybe getting banged up and whatever it might be, and that's where you're headed, then you're probably not winning a ton of games unless your defense is incredible. Now, I think the Vikings defense can be good, but we also do have to factor that there's parts of the defense that are under construction. They don't have Harrison Smith as of this moment. The defensive line is young, but we don't know if they're going to add someone. Like, there's a lot of different, moving parts to that. And if you only get, out of your quarterback's total, let's say even out of your quarterback's total between the two, 3,500 yards and 22 touchdowns or something, like, that's just not going to do it. And you would rather see JJ McCarthy, which that discussion could happen. If Murray wins the job, McCarthy stays on the team, and you're going through the season and you're 4-5, and it's just not really that great with Kyler Murray, it might be the time to put JJ McCarthy in, play him 8 games in a row, hell or high water, and find out what you have. Because if you go 4-5 off the bat, and then you hit that awful part of your schedule where you've got, Green Bay, Detroit and Buffalo. I mean, and then you're off to San Francisco to play in Mexico City. Like, if you get to that point in the season and you don't have a very good record, I mean, it's really hard to see things turning around. So unless they loved how he was playing, but they were losing games, which happened kind of sometimes during Kirk's era, well, okay, then you got to stick with him. But if he's just sort of a little up, a little down, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's really bad, then it would make more sense to play JJ McCarthy, which is a reason not to trade him, because you always have that kind of in your bag of, well, we can go to somebody else if this isn't working. Norris Force says this team got embarrassed last year. No playoffs, no Pro Bowlers. I'm expecting a motivated team with something to prove. This is one thing that people have said to me about Kyler Murray when I've spent a lot of time, and it's not easy. I was just having this discussion with Tyler Dunn today about how it's not really easy to find out a lot about Kyler Murray because he kind of has a tight circle. He's not a super outgoing guy. He doesn't do like a ton of podcasts and bare his soul or anything like that. He doesn't have, a huge friend network that you're going to be able to call this person. And so it's hard to, totally know everything about Kyler Murray, and we'll get to know him more, I think, as he's here. But in terms of his motivation, that is the one thing that I have heard about Kyler Murray, is that his motivation is extremely high to do what Sam Darnold did, which is basically prove the entire world wrong. And I think that goes for a lot of the guys that are on this team, but it's not just, it's not like you need Brian O'Neill motivated. He's always motivated. But I think that instead of motivation, how about desperation? That you have is motivation, of course. These guys are in the NFL. Like, they want to succeed. Everybody, all 32 teams, like they're all fighting, especially at the beginning of the year. But desperation, there's a lot on this team for Kyler and his career and where it goes. If it doesn't work out here, where's he going? Like, what happens next if it doesn't work out for Kyler Murray with all these weapons on the Vikings and this offense? And for a lot of the veterans, for Aaron Jones, for Brian O'Neill, for anybody over the age of 27, I mean, you start to hear the footsteps of the end of your career, or hear the clock ticking, and this team has quite a few of those guys. Son of Beavers, was Mike salty? We got Thielen back last year. We gave you a fourth, Mike. What else do you want? I don't know. I don't remember talking to Mike about that. Why would he be? Is he a Carolina guy? Is he like a Carolina fan? I don't know. I don't know if Mike was salty about that or not. But, I mean, Carolina certainly won the trade by the 4th round draft pick. I do wonder if, Thielen had maybe gotten in more because there were injuries. Because after Addison came back, then when we talk about Ty Felton, it's the same sort of deal. It's like, well, when were these guys going to play? There weren't any injuries. The Vikings had a healthy wide receiver room for the entire year. Leonard says Ty Chandler had a higher yards per carry than Chuck Foreman, who had better blocking. Chuck Foreman was also like the GOAT of, at the time, catching the football. He was an incredible weapon out of the backfield in receiving. And there's a sample size issue as well with Chandler. He only played a handful of games as a starting running back, where if you're Chuck Foreman and you're playing every game over many years, your yards per carry is going to even out a little bit more than if you maybe just have like a part-time role. But Ty Chandler had something there to him. And that's why when we talk about Damon Claiborne, I don't know what I can really predict from him when they just had this kind of player and they didn't really use him. Justin says predicting the Vikings will go 15-2. Says, I know it seems insane, just feeling a special season. They stay healthy, get a little lucky. Harrison comes back for one final year. Justin, there was a guy, and I haven't seen him in a while. So if you're out there, jump into the chat here, who in the summer of 2024, every single night on our live chats would be like, Sam Darnold is going to throw for 30 touchdowns and the Vikings are going to win a bunch of games. Trust me. And we were always like, okay, dude, well, that's fun, right? Like, I don't know, summer predictions, right? Go ahead. Shoot your shot. And the dude nailed it. And at some point, like, we gave him his props and he was in the chat and whatever else. But hey, if you want to be that guy who's calling a big season, the Vikings tend to do this. They do tend to have a 6.5 win over under and then somehow win 14 games. And then the next year they, come short. Although last year, I think that most of the world was not actually in the gambling world buying it. I think they actually hit the over. I thought it was 8.5. It might've been 9.5, but I thought it was 8.5 last year for the over under. But my point is that, hey, you might be right. Like, we've seen other seasons that the Vikings went into that we didn't have the highest expectations and it ended up working out. I had the Vikings in 2017 as a 10-win team going in and they won 13. Mike says all good teams can run enough to be a threat. Even the Vikings throughout history, ball security and maybe 65-35 run pass ratio. I don't know if anyone has run 65-35 since Chuck Foreman was playing, but more like, I mean, if you're 50-50 at any point since 1995, you're probably, well, some teams are with the run pass ratio. If they have Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen, it's going to look like it, but they don't actually call those plays. That's just with scrambling. So on called plays, the NFL is usually like 58% pass, somewhere in there, 55 to 58% pass. It's trending a little bit back in the other direction. It's always going to be a passing league. When you look at the teams that made the Super Bowl, guess where they ranked in terms of passing expected points added? Number 1 and number 2, right? If you can throw the football, well, no, wait, I'm sorry. That was the Rams was number 1 and the Patriots number 2 and the Seahawks were number 9. So top 10 in passing EPA. I believe the only team outside of the top 10 in the last 10 years to make the Super Bowl was Philadelphia when Saquon Barkley ran for 2,000 yards. And that's it. Every other team has been top 10 in passing expected points added. So you have to be a top passing team. You don't have to be the number 1 passing team if you can run really well, but you better, as you said, and I think you put it well, it has to be a threat. I would also say it has to be a tool. It's more of a tool than it is a threat. Like, yeah, I mean, you want teams to be, up at the line of scrimmage and use play action, but I think it has to be a tool where you are up 10 points in the third quarter and you hand it off to Jordan Mason 4 straight times and half of the third quarter is gone and the other team is, like now we're now chasing, we're now getting worn down, that kind of thing. That's where I think you can really utilize it. The other is, we know this, third and short, goal line, like these things have to happen. If you want to be an elite offense, they have to happen. You have to convert on 3rd and 2. You have to convert with first down and 5 at the 5-yard line by just handing it off and getting into the end zone. You can't always ask your quarterback to play Superman. Brian, do you think there will be any clear signals in training camp about how the running game might be different this year? I don't really think so, to be honest with you. Maybe we could pick up on some stuff, but not really. Now, if you were a really excellent X's and O's coach and you could film the entire practice, which I guess some fans do, and then tweet it out, so maybe you'll see some highlights there of their run plays, you might be able to identify, oh, that's a little wrinkle there that they're doing with this outside zone thing. I know what outside zone looks like, but I don't know if during training camp with it open to the media and the fans, they're even going to show us the wrinkles, because a lot of times what they do with the run and pass game, when the fans are there, when media is there, is they will be showing a lot of their base stuff. They will be working on base stuff, to which if Sean McVay watched a video and he saw, or Matt LaFleur, who's playing the Vikings in week 1, you could bet he's going to have somebody, I guarantee you, he's going to have somebody watching every single fan video of the Vikings. So, and maybe there'll be some people dressed in purple gear that work for the Packers trying to, they do stuff like that. So if you're trying to, down in Green Bay, figure out what the Vikings are doing in the open practices, it's not likely you're going to see anything that's going to surprise you that you wouldn't have seen on tape already from the Vikings. It's their base offense that they're working through. And then once they get past that portion of camp where the practices close to the fans and media, That's when they start the game planning. That's when they start adding all the wrinkles. So can we get at least a look at, Damon Claiborne in preseason games? Yeah. Can we hear about it from the players, which we already have started to? Yeah. But can we actually sit there on the side and identify, oh man, like they're having this like different little wrinkle, this different thing to the run game? Like, no, probably not. And they probably won't do it while we're there. That would be my guess. So you're going to have to take a leap of faith there. Axton, I believe they brought back Aaron Jones because one, he's a great locker room and moral guy, and two, because he can mentor Damon Claiborne. What do you think? I think that is very true, and I also think that his hands are not going to age the same way that his legs are. That, as Mike Clay had him at 47 receptions, I mean, that's a great season catching the football for Aaron Jones. If he were able to do that, he has hands and even route running ability that you see from some receivers, and you just don't have a lot of guys coming out of the backfield who could do that. Pass protection may be part of it, that he can be trusted on every third down. He was not great in pass protection last year. I don't love that for him. I actually like Xavier Scott and Max Bredesen to be that role a little bit more than Aaron Jones, because you're just asking him to get beat up. But what do coaches do? They put in guys that they trust. So I wouldn't be surprised there. But I tend to agree with you. I mean, I think that they really like Damon Claiborne. I think they're very high on him from the draft, and we're excited to get him where they got him. And they want that to work. And Aaron Jones takes it upon himself. When we talk about players, sometimes the term force multiplier will be used as how someone plays impacts other players. So if you have a great left tackle, it helps your guard, for example. I think Aaron Jones is that as a person. I think that he impacts other people so positively, everyone around him, that's another reason to have him back. I do agree with that. Jay Vikings says, what's the one move you would make before training camp if you were Teasley? I would make 11 trades. No, I'm just kidding. But do something, Nolan. Still, I'm going to start counting the days. Nolan hasn't done a thing. They did bring in a tight end and someone else. Anyway, for like back end of the roster stuff, it's the outside linebacker position is the most obvious to me. But, Joker was talking earlier in the chat about the price tag there. And one thing that I would want to make sure if I was in Nolan Teasley's seat is that we have enough cap space to make a big move at the trade deadline if that's what it needs to be done. So if I'm sitting there in Nolan Teasley's seat and I'm saying, all right, well, we're 6-2, and what are we going to do? Kyler's playing great, and we have this one move, and wow, this guy is on the trade block. I don't know who this guy is, but like someone is on the trade block, and it's a superstar, and we're going to go get him. Or even like a really good player, we're going to go get him. Like that's me playing Nolan Teasley. He doesn't talk like me, but that's what we're doing. I'm saying that to our room. I'm hyping up our front office. We're going to get him. Sir, Rob Brzezinski says, how are we going to afford it? Because we spent $10 million on Hassan Reddick, right? You don't want that to happen. You don't want it to get very complicated and convoluted because you made a move before training camp, but that's a position that I feel like is an absolute must for them. And then I would keep an eye on running back and see where they are health-wise throughout the summer. A lot of it for me is, should you give people a chance first? Like give Chaz Chambliss, Ty Ingram Dawkins, Bo Richter, that whole crew, Tyler Batty, a chance, because you could say, well, man, I don't know, those guys aren't good enough, but we didn't know that a lot of guys were good enough. Jalen Redmond is one of the most out-of-nowhere stars, or really semi-stars, that I've ever seen, right? So maybe there's something in there that they like that you'd want to see first. I don't know if a lot has to be done before training camp. Like there's a long time before the season, and veteran players are kind of famous for showing up in mid to late August and playing pretty well, including Stephon Gilmore a couple years ago. Jay Darnold part 2 could be. I think it's not that hard to talk yourself into Kyler Murray being Darnold part 2. 14 wins is a little lofty considering the schedule that they play, but here's the other thing though. When Justin is mentioning 15 wins, 15 is excessive, Justin, but when you're talking about like the seasons and the ebbs and flows of Vikings history, think about it from like why that would be. Like, what are the forces that work secretly behind the scenes that push teams one way or the other? What are the forces? Well, injury is a major force that pushes a team's success or holds a team back. And Seattle, I think, had every single starter last year at the Super Bowl. That's insane. But I think Philadelphia was all but one. So that's going to push your success big time is injuries. We all know that. There's no way to talk about that in June because we have no clue. Couldn't even begin to project it. Who's going to be the most injured team? Will the Vikings stay healthy? Whatever. But one thing we do know is that schedule also does it. And I am not very sold on this being a hard schedule for the Vikings. I mean, I've seen, the North is tough. There's no question about that. But the South, I don't believe is that tough. 2 out of the 4 teams in the AFC East are not that tough in Miami and New York. And it's almost unimaginable to see either one of those teams with above 500 records. But the big one for me, and this goes for Kyler Murray, but also goes for Brian Flores, is 9 home games, 7 away games, and 1 neutral site game. So you are playing 9 of your games at US Bank Stadium. That's a factor with this team. I don't know if it's a factor with every team, but it's definitely a factor with this team. Some of these things are kind of just, the winds are blowing your way a little bit when we try to predict those forces. And it might result in Kyler Murray having a very good season. But we don't know how the defenses are going to play out. Joker, would Cam Newton or Andrew Luck still be number 1 picks with gambling issues like Sorsby? Andrew Luck, yes. I don't know about Cam Newton, but there were all sorts of concerns about Cam Newton's character. There was that whole, like, he has a disingenuous smile, he stole a laptop, and yada, yada, yada. And maybe that was just an attempt at kind of character assassination by some teams to try to get him to drop. And I remember I was in Buffalo at that time where we were talking about how the Bills had gone 0-8 to start the season, and then they went 4-4 the rest of the way and lost out on Cam Newton. It was like, oh my gosh. They got Marcel Darius. Congrats. You got a defensive tackle and didn't win crap for the next 10 years. But like, congrats. You won those 4 games for the culture. Anyway, but yeah, I mean, Cam Newton had some of those issues. Andrew Luck is the best prospect other than Peyton Manning to come out in the NFL. So I don't think that would have mattered. And maybe some of it with Andrew Luck was that he was such a button-up kind of guy, but I don't think so. I think it was arm strength, football IQ. And here would be the reason why Sorsby, if you're really making this argument, a team drafted Jameis Winston number 1, and there was much worse stuff than anything from Cam Newton, and much worse stuff than gambling on his own team to win, which does matter. I mean, we are talking about a guy who was gambling on a hot dog contest. Like, it's not, this is not a violent crime, folks. So there's a little bit of like, we got to separate and keep perspective on this stuff. Son of Beavers, how do you think the punting battle will end? I think it will end with Johnny Heckers, the punter, and Brett Thorson on the roster with the international exception. Norse Force, I just heard about that story the other day of, what's his name? Art Schlitzer gambling his career away from Ohio State. I had never heard that story before. Henry Lake mentioned it to me. Jay says, in this time, do we need the drama? What kind of drama, though, really? What drama really does Brendan Sorsby bring? First day it happens, yes. And then first day of camp, and then what? Like, when is the drama happening? Now, yes, if he gets suspended again for gambling, then it will be dramatic. I would agree. But aside from that, we're not talking about a guy who's been a walking circus. This isn't Johnny Manziel. We can't bucket everything into one category of dude has issues. Like, this dude has an issue that I guess he's dealing with, and teams are going to have to decide whether they buy into that or not, or whether they could just randomly lose their quarterback. But if they believe in the rehab process when it comes to that, and the explanation for how it happened and everything else, and the process to keep it from happening again, I don't see this as any sort of potential circus around this guy. It's not. What was Johnny Manziel doing? Like renting houses and doing a bunch of cocaine and all sorts. Like, this is not what we're talking about. We're talking about a guy gambling on balls and strikes at a Reds game. So it's different. It's different. I'm not saying it's okay. It's definitely not okay. I'm just saying that it's different. Norman says, starting quarterback for the Vikings 2023. After Cousins suffered, what are we talking about here? Oh, okay, yeah. So I'm not really following. After Cousins suffered the season-ending injury, the team had a. Oh, it's like an AI bot. Do we have an AI bot? Hello, AI bot. Good to see you. I can't say we get a lot of those in the chat. Does that mean we're doing well? Ryder says, I think the coach is a little gun shy about the running game after 2023 with Madison. That season was enough to sour anyone from trusting the run game. Here was another thing about, the run game too, is in Detroit, this will always live in my brain. In Detroit, that week 18 game, they were at the goal line several times with the capability of totally shifting that game in a different direction. If they could just hand the ball off and smash it into the end zone, that Detroit game in week 18, 2024 is very different because there was that, Cam Akers had that really long run, got him down to the goal line. They couldn't bust in. There was the one where Jefferson drops the touchdown. There's one where Darnold overthrows an open receiver. And can you just hand the ball off and go into the end zone? I don't disagree with you though, because they haven't had a Delvin Cook. And when they did have a Delvin Cook, they had half a Delvin Cook. They did not have the 2020 or 2019 version. They had, a shadow of what he was, especially in the second half of that year. That does need to be mentioned every time we talk about O'Connell in the run game, is just, hey, this is a guy who has never really had a great running back, and they need to find a way to get one. I think Teasley will. Joker, how good would Brett Thorson have to be in preseason to win the job? I think he can outpunt Johnny Hecker. It's really the holding. That's the main thing. Can you hold? And can you also punt the way your coach wants you to punt? That's another thing too, is they have this down to a science of the trajectories, how far and also how high. So you need to be able to do what you're asked to do, but I just wouldn't do it. With someone like Johnny Hecker, who's been a holder for a really long time, and your kicker is one of your superstars, I'm just not doing it. Joker, Ty Chandler playing well for the Saints. That would be another hypothetical win for the 2022 draft class. I know, I was just looking at Pittsburgh's roster the other day and I saw Isaiah Tomowo and I was like, these guys are everywhere. And I was, because I'm doing this whole thing around the NFL week on the newsletter, purpleinsider.football. And so I'm looking at everybody's depth chart and writing, some little essays and breakdowns and stuff. And I'm like, seeing a bunch of 2022 Vikings draft picks around. They're not stars, but they're around. Matt says, do you think Claiborne could take some of Jones's yards? Feels like he could start to do that over the season if he gets confidence. I think they would like to see that they would like to see where maybe if you're stumbling a little bit in the run game, bring out the guy who's your fastest weapon and give him a toss, see what he can do. I think as the season goes along, the projection, if Claiborne was getting more carries, would be that Jones got banged up. That if Jones gets banged up, then yeah, you are next man up if you're Damon Claiborne. And I think they will need to use either Xavier Scott or go get somebody else to do pass protection or third down back stuff. But I would not be surprised at all if there were some injuries built in to, when we're trying to project next year and Claiborne gets his chance. From only seeing him just move and catch a ball and run with a ball, and that's it. That's all I've seen. There's something there with his burst and explosiveness and bendiness and agility that could get him on the field. And I think that they would like that. They talked about that at the draft. Like, this guy could break off explosive plays. He did it a ton at Wake Forest. They don't have that in the backfield. You as a team, you'd love to see it happen. If you're the Vikings, you're dreaming and dying for this to happen. It's just how realistic do we want to be in the middle of June when we're talking about projections? I think at least a little. We have to be at least a little. Young cringe. Kirk Cousins was good enough to win a Super Bowl if the bar is top 15 quarterback play. With Kirk Cousins, it was always a little complicated with him in the Super Bowl because it was hard to believe that there wouldn't be a game somewhere in his way where the defensive line was just good and he was not able to overcome it. Because we see quarterbacks who are more gifted. We see some of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, if their defensive line, if the opponent's defensive line takes over the game, that they're not able to win. That was even Drake May. But Cousins was not equipped at all to handle those games. So we saw it many, many times in big games where Dexter Lawrence breaks through the line. There's no capability of escaping whatsoever, right? And that was how Akeem Hicks dominated them for a while. They did have the rosters in 2018 and 19 to seriously compete for a Super Bowl, and it didn't happen because San Francisco had a good D-line, and then it was over. And then you'd see the offensive line blamed, and you're like, well, yeah, okay. I mean, I don't disagree, but at the same time, he did have two of the best offensive tackles in the league, and there was just no playmaking ability there. But I also think with Kirk, his contract cutting into the roster was a major factor as well. And the fact that he would never take a contract that was longer term to push cap hits down the road. It would always be, highly guaranteed, if not fully guaranteed. Those were factors as well. But when you're talking about could theoretically Kirk Cousins with his talent in 2020, 2021, 2019, that era, those 3 years, could that guy get to a Super Bowl and win? The answer is yes. He was playing good enough football to do it. And it really would depend on how good the rest of your team was, and it would depend on who you landed in the playoffs. If you ended up landing the right teams in the playoffs that weren't great at pass rushing, you would have a chance. But if you're going to take up 20% of the salary cap, then you're not likely with that quarterback, with the 15th best quarterback, 12th best quarterback, you're not likely to be able to win, or at least during that time. Now, since then, a lot of quarterbacks have begun signing extensions that are very restructurable, that have lots of void years, that, you look back at what Darnold's cap hit was last year, it was like 17 mil. And you're like, wait a minute, how did that happen? He was getting 33 a year, but not really, because all that tomfoolery with the cap, it was going on before with restructuring contracts and kicking money down the road. But the void year stuff really only began being used a ton in 2020 and then beyond that. So, and the Vikings did a little bit with Kirk, but it just wasn't enough. Like when they started using void years in 2020 and 2021, it wasn't enough because the roster had already degraded. So things just never really truly lined up for him. But Kyler is different from that perspective where you could say, yeah, he's a 15th best quarterback, but the way he does it gives you a better chance to win because of the athletic element, the playmaking, the scrambling, that if your team is a little overwhelmed, that you'll have a better chance. Historically with Kyler, that hasn't really been the case. I mean, he has been a great scrambler, but when opposing defenses are great, he's struggled against them, which is why he's 2-9 career against Seattle. Now, how much is that to do with just Kyler? And how much is that to do with the fact that his team was undermanned? He was bringing a knife to a gunfight with a team like Seattle. So, I don't know. That's why the NFL is so interesting, isn't it? Young Cringe says, Delvin Cook, Daniel Jones comparison of first down runs should tell you that KOC doesn't run the football enough. Your star running back shouldn't lag behind a middling QB in rushing stats. I mean, Daniel Jones had a ton of first down runs that season, so that was kind of exceptional. But I thought in 2022, they ran the ball pretty well in the first half of the year, and then Delvin Cook faded. So chicken and egg. There's a lot of chicken and egg with KOC. Now, when Jordan Mason is pounding people's faces in, and it's 2nd and 1 at the goal line, you need to run the ball with him. You just have to. Carson Wentz is your quarterback. There's been a little bit of a lack of awareness of who the quarterback is. Sometimes you have to say to yourself, Sam Darnold might just do something crazy here and throw a pick, like against Green Bay in 2024. Or Josh Dobbs should not be throwing 35 passes against the Chicago Bears on this Monday Night Football. Or Carson Wentz should be handing it off on 2nd and 1 at the goal line. There's the forever trust in his quarterbacks has, I think, sent him at times down the wrong path. And I get it. He's a former quarterback. He wants to win with the quarterback. He wants to win throwing the ball. That is the way to chase the Super Bowl in the NFL still to this day. But there are times where you have to look at who's actually on the field. I mean, Nick Mullins throwing all those passes and everything. Like, look who's actually on the field and go, this might not be the way to do it. Although, who knows what happens to Josh Dobbs if Alexander Mattison doesn't fumble against the Denver Broncos and they get a win in that game. Purple Tears, how many bombs did Sam throw when he was there? Like, you mean Sam Darnold when he was, like what his percentage was? It was surprisingly not that much higher than Kirk Cousins. It was like, I would have to look this up, but it was like 10% versus 12%. But Darnold completed a heck of a lot of them. And he also had a ton of, 15 to 17 yard throws as well. But his actual success throwing the ball down the field, he did lead the league that year in throwing the ball over 20 yards in terms of the actual yardage. But the percentage of times where he did it, because he had like a 97 yard throw. He hit some massive passes, which skewed that number a little bit. But in terms of how often he actually took shots down the field, it was not as much as you would think. I mean, it was much more like 12% of the time, probably a little bit above average. And then he had a ton of success with it. So Kyler and his ability to throw down the field, that is a question for sure. And how he'll be able to do that. Pie chart from Pizza Gary. Pizza Gary asking for a pie is, irony, Pizza Gary. But thank you so much for the super chat. As I always say, it's much appreciated, but definitely not required. So thank you for that. You could just ask a regular question if you want, but I'll take it. Pie chart. What's the most important thing that we accomplish this year short of the Super Bowl? KOC playoff run, establish the future quarterback, draft positioning for 27, or Brian Flores doesn't leave, or Justin Jefferson is happy. So that is 5 things, which makes the math a little bit difficult. So in terms of importance, I think that in a different world, you'd be like, draft position, man, go get Arch Manning or whoever the top quarterback is going to be for the future, because you don't have one. But I also think we have to talk about it in terms of the organization's goals as well. I think it's much better for the organization. I know that some people might disagree with this. I think it's much better for the organization if KOC is good and he is here for a long time, rather than either being fired or being on the super duper hot seat going into 2027. He is a good coach who has won a lot of football games, and a lot of football games when he has his starting quarterback. They are 31-11 when either Kirk Cousins or Sam Darnold plays. That's pretty good. So find the man as quarterback, refine the play calling throughout this year, those sorts of things. So I think KOC with a playoff run to really solidify himself, to back off a lot of the pressure, is probably, in this pie chart with these options, I would go like 50%. I think that's really, really important. And establishing the future quarterback, it's important. It would be nice if it was Kyler Murray or JJ McCarthy, but I don't know how realistic it is that we're going to say either one of these guys, wow, we're all set. They're going to be the quarterback for a long time. I don't know if they'll be saying that at the end of the year. Establishing the future quarterback path, though, let's put it that way. I will go 20% on establishing the future quarterback path, which means either guy is here and you're sure of it, or you are drafting someone next year. So, see, now I've got to readjust, because now in my brain, I'm saying that's pretty darn important. I think KOC winning a playoff game is really important to him and to the organization, to get like the competitiveness out of all the money that they spent, out of all these really good players. And if you were to do that, you've got a lot of guys who are young actually on this team. Like suddenly it's Dominique Orange, it's Caleb Banks, it's Donovan Jackson. Like there are guys that are emerging on this team a little bit more than they were over previous years, this draft class. So let me erase, I went too high on KOC playoff run, but let me dial it back to 25% on KOC playoff run, probably 30% on establishing the future quarterback, if not maybe even more than that. Let's go 45. 70% of this is KOC playoff run and establish the path. Draft position, I'll just go 5%. So I was at 75%. Flo doesn't leave, doesn't seem very realistic to me. So I'll just give that 5. And then I will go 20 for Justin Jefferson's happiness, which is very important, but not quite as important as the quarterback path, which is going to dictate, I don't know how long. So hopefully when you give me 5 options, that does make the math harder, but hopefully that made sense. Axton says, way too early for the 2027 draft question. Have you heard anything about the quarterback from OSU named Drew Mestmaker? There's a hot scuttlebutt about his potential. And we know how reckless speculation is this time of year. So I haven't, but also I'm not a college football person. I follow some college football people and I watch college football, but I'm not like super in that world. So if someone's going to emerge as the next great quarterback, I kind of have to see it like while I'm watching a game. But I do think that this draft class has a lot of potential. But I mean, is this like the next great quarterback prospect, maybe worth watching? Always interested in who the names are, but I can't say that I'm an expert on college football. Purple Tears. I still say we need to keep our quarterback room just as it is. You know that they're all going to be needed. I'm just saying with Sorsby that I don't see how it really shakes it up that much. You bring him in and he's your fourth quarterback and you see what you have. And if you spent a 4th round draft pick to get someone with potential to play like a top half of the first round quarterback after a year or two, every option should be on the table. That's my point on Sorsby. Every option. You are not in a position as the Vikings to say, no, we don't need that. That's teams with quarterbacks, not you. Young Cringe says, Messmaker number 2 quarterback in next year's class. Okay, all right. Well, I'll be watching him. I'll be keeping an eye on him. Hunter says, what do you feel like can be gleaned from training camp? What kind of things should we be looking for versus what can't be known until the season starts? You know, a lot of things about training camp are like where guys are settling into certain roles and certain positions. So we know what, Justin Jefferson is for this offense. Although, what can be gleaned would be the chemistry that Justin has with his quarterbacks. I mean, that's going to matter a lot. But I look at camp outside of this quarterback competition is usually roles. And if guys are falling off or guys are emerging from behind them. So just last year, for example, there goes Harrison Phillips getting traded. That was pretty shocking that they did it. But the way that everyone else was playing in that defensive tackle room, you went, well, I guess it's not that shocking because Levi Drake Rodriguez and Jalen Redmond are playing all the time and they actually look really good. And I'm always keeping an eye out for stuff like that. Guys who we didn't necessarily expect. And then, we've got to pay attention to Theo Jackson. I know Theo hasn't become a star yet, but Theo in training camp was really, really good a couple of years in a row. And now he's got a chance to potentially start. Like you have to have your attention on those guys, the Josh Metellus, Ivan Pace a couple of years ago, who might be showing you something that you didn't necessarily expect. So a Dylan Bell, who's gotten a lot of run from a handful of minicamp receptions, but you've got my attention, Dylan Bell, right? That's what we're doing in minicamp is like, okay, show me something. If he emerges in training camp, then we're going to start to talk about like, wait a minute, they've got like a UDFA wide receiver who's actually starting to do something here. And once upon a time, that was Adam Thielen. That's where Mr. Mankato comes from. That's what I'm looking for a lot more. And if someone's a veteran who's struggling, if there's a veteran out there that's having a pretty rough time, this was like B-Rob in 2018 when he got cut. Bad idea, by the way. Should never have cut him. But there was a little bit of coming off an injury, I think, or off-season something, and it just didn't have the burst that they were looking for that he had for so many years. You're always keeping an eye out for who could be that surprising cut. Alex Boone, once upon a time, 2016. So you never really know. Oh, okay. I don't know if you thought that Mike Clay was a Panthers fan. I don't know if he is. He might be. I've never asked him. Norris Force, do you think Ty Felton is on the bubble with Dylan Bell in the lineup? We don't really have any idea what Dylan Bell is really going to be. I've just been sort of impressed really early. But in terms of Ty Felton, I don't think he's on the bubble at all because he's a very good special teamer. He's going to be on the team. Just depends on does he work out a role or not. But the special teams element for sure with the way he played last year will keep Ty Felton on the roster. Lake Erie Vikings need to stick with JJ and get what you can for Kyler Murray. Now, why would you do that right now? Why would you just signed Kyler Murray to be your starting quarterback. Why would you sign him, teach him the offense, and then get rid of him after minicamp? It doesn't make any sense. They brought Kyler Murray here to be the starting quarterback so they could win games and compete for a division. Now, whether that changes in training camp, maybe. But I think the JJ people have to be realistic about what is going on here. This is not a 50-50 competition. It is one guy is starting way ahead of the other one in training camp, and while he learns the offense, they may continue to give 50-50 reps, but Kyler Murray is the starting quarterback of this team right now, unless JJ McCarthy either is amazing or Kyler Murray is nowhere near what he's been throughout his career. So I don't understand any case for, what do you mean get rid of, like, what are you they just signed him. What? Rich, did I see correctly that Kyler has fumbled 37 times in his 7 seasons, even though he's missed something like 30 starts? Fumble numbers are real goofy, man. I mean, if you get a shotgun snap and you drop it and pick it right back up, I think it goes as a fumble. Oh, I've never really been able to make heads or tails of those with quarterbacks. If the center snaps the ball, like last year with Carson Wentz, remember when Brandel snapped it over his head? They called it a fumble. Until they figure out a better way to rule those, I don't know what to make of it. Kyler runs a lot, and he runs a lot more than other people, so I wouldn't be surprised if he had more fumbles than other people. It is an issue with Kyler at times, the erratic nature, where if you're scrambling to try to make plays, I brought this up before, that some years he's been amazing when pressured, and some years he's been terrible. You usually don't see that. People are kind of either good or not when it comes to, like, Josh Allen's always good, Jared Goff's always bad under pressure. Murray's all over the map. It's wild, and that's because scrambling is by nature pretty unpredictable. Dropping back, hitting the back foot, completing 10-yard passes, that's why Tom Brady, right? That's Peyton Manning. That's why pocket quarterbacks a lot of times. What Mahomes did to break the game of football was played consistently out of structure. And he's, one of the first to ever be able to do this. Steve Young was able to do it, John Elway to some extent. But Mahomes is one of the rare ones in history. I should just say rare ones in history to be able to improvise and yet do it efficiently every single week. That's just not, it doesn't happen that often. So Murray does have that in his game. Thank you, Mike. I appreciate that. I'm glad you're enjoying the show. Somebody mentioned the pie charts. Yeah, I do enjoy the pie charts. Try to do 4 if you can. Try to do 4. 5 is too much math for me on the fly. Son of Beavers, I think Kwesi Adofo-Mensah went 53 days without making a roster move last year, and Deshaun Wright broke the streak. Oh, yeah. Or was that 2 years ago, you mean? And wasn't Deshaun Wright, was he cut out of this camp? Or was it 2024? Now I can't remember. When I thought Deshaun Wright was 2024. Maybe it was cut out of last year's camp. Maybe you're right. Maybe he was. And then got all the interceptions in Chicago. Purple Tear says, who brought up Zadarius Smith coming back? I hadn't seen that or heard that. Maybe that's just somebody's idea. I don't know. If he did, that would be crazy and unexpected. But if Zadarius Smith does stuff that's unexpected, that's one thing I learned about Zadarius Smith. He is a heck of a player, though. He could probably still play. Beaver's best friend. Your last episode, you asked what the bar was for Kyler and or McCarthy. For me, it's this. They have to win at least 2 playoff games or else the Vikings are drafting another rookie quarterback. 2 playoff games means pretty much what you're saying is you have to go to the NFC Championship or the Super Bowl, because the Seahawks won 2 playoff games last year to get to the Super Bowl. And, otherwise you're talking NFC Championship. I don't know if that's the answer or not. I don't think it's the craziest thing anyone's said on the show. Like, the bar has to be very high for Kyler Murray. But think of it this way. If Kyler Murray plays 16 games, throws for 3,800 yards, totals 30 touchdowns, and the Vikings win 12 games, and they go into the playoffs and they face the, Dallas Cowboys in the first round, and they beat the Cowboys, and Kyler plays really, really well, and they win against the Cowboys, let's just say 28-21, and they are then forced to go on the road to face the Los Angeles Rams in the division round, and they lose to the Rams. Let's just say 28-17. Kyler's okay. The Rams are just too much. They're just too good. Myles Garrett's amazing. You're going to get rid of Kyler Murray? I don't know. At that point, I think you'd be saying, all right, you can win a lot of games with this guy, and now you have to figure out how to draft well enough to build around him to get to the point where you could play like the Rams. And once upon a time, Matthew Stafford was a flawed former number 1 overall pick from a bad organization, by the way, just to throw that out there. But I think that saying the only way you would keep him is if you win 2 playoff games is, I mean, if you did the same thing for Sam Darnold a couple of years ago, then you would let him go to Seattle and win the Super Bowl there. So I'm not sure that we can do it on playoff wins. It has to be the accumulation of the total performance for me. And to understand how much chemistry do you have with Justin Jefferson, right? How much chemistry do you have with Jordan Addison? And Kevin O'Connell is such a big part of this. Kyler Murray has not always been the easiest guy to coach. And if Kyler connects with KOC extremely well, and it's a total difference, total shift for him, then, which it was for Kirk, by the way. I mean, Kirk, not that he was uncoachable. He's always been extremely coachable, Cousins, but from a leadership angle, he was introverted around the team. He was not necessarily the guy in 2018 when he got to Minnesota who was saying, hey, this is my team now. And then O'Connell was like, dude, you got to get out in front. Like, you got to be the guy. And he actually transitioned into that role really well. So there's a lot of different ways to look at this. I don't think it can just be team success, because there's also another world. Think about like the Trent Dilfer scenario. If Kyler Murray was just kind of bad, and yet their defense was number 1 in the league, and they found a way to win 2 playoff games because the other team's starting quarterback gets hurt, like all this stuff, there's iterations where you can come up with that. It doesn't really make sense to do it just on wins. Jay, besides Jefferson, who are the 2 other players on offense, 1 on defense, who could help us into the playoffs this year? You mean on the actual team that like they need to thrive in order for them to make the playoffs? Like, that's how I'm interpreting the question. I think that the defensive tackles, the rookie defensive tackles, have to be good. Levi Drake has been a nice development story. He could play a lot of snaps. And Jalen Redmond is, I think, borderline of being a star player, like one of those maybe underappreciated, underrated type of star players in the league. But if Caleb Banks comes in, and Mike Clay had Caleb Banks playing like 580 snaps. If he plays 580 snaps, that means he's played really well. And that could push your team from a defensive tackle being more dominant physically than the offensive lineman he's facing. Like, that could seriously push your team. So that those 2 guys would be huge for me. And I think that Jordan Addison is the obvious choice, but probably actually Christian Darrisaw is really it. I mean, if Christian Darrisaw is playing 17 games, even 15 games, he plays 90% of snaps this year at the same level that he usually plays, you're in the playoffs. I mean, he is that good, and his impact is that significant. Joker says, I won a milkshake gambling on golf with my friends over the weekend. Arguably more exciting than the hot dog eating contest. Like actual you golfing. I thought you meant the golf tournament. Well, congratulations on that. I try not to have even fun bets on golfing because I don't want it to make me upset. I don't want to get mad at my friends for not having a certain score. I don't want to throw clubs into the woods or whatever. So, Purple Tears, who's better, Delvin or James Cook? Delvin is probably more gifted, but James is having the better career. Buffalo helps James a lot, and health. He's just been more healthy. Delvin Cook will always kind of be a what if he had been able to stay healthy guy for the Vikings. 2019, he gets banged up second half of the season. It's not the same. 2020, same kind of thing. 2021, it was really first half of years that were really good for Dalvin Cook. But James Cook has been a touchdown machine, yardage machine. He's just been healthier. And I think that we wanted Dalvin Cook to be something in terms of a receiver, but he really wasn't. I mean, he was a screen pass guy, but he was not really a wide receiver. He was painted a little bit that way coming out because he had some highlight reel catches at Florida State, but he didn't really like run routes and stuff that often, occasionally, but not that much. I think James can really catch the ball too, probably a little bit of higher level. So maybe Delvin's more gifted and James is having the better career. Justin says, I want to be positive as a fan always. It's hard times with the Vikings, but there are reasons for the optimism. Write it down, 15-2. I think their schedule's not bad with 9 home games. Yeah, I agree with that. JP says, even if JJ is better than Kyler, unlikely I wouldn't start him because if he hit a brick wall during his season, his value would be near zero. We'd be depreciating our own asset, wouldn't we? Well, you can't depreciate it from nothing, which is right now the trade value on JJ McCarthy is nothing. If they put him out on the block right now, you're getting 4th round, 5th round offers at this moment. If he played well in the preseason, maybe somebody gets desperate. It's possible you could get something else higher than that. I wouldn't worry about quarterback at all as really an asset. It's who's the better quarterback that gives you the chance to win more games. The reason that if JJ was better than Kyler during camp, there's still a chance you go with Kyler is that the games are real and they're not camp. And last year we got fooled by camp. And camp looked like JJ McCarthy. I mean, if you had asked me for a projection last year, I'm sure I gave one for JJ McCarthy and probably went with like 23 touchdowns and 8 picks and, a good season, 11. I know I went with 11 wins, 64% completion percent. Like that's where I was headed last year after watching him in training camp. And then it was not anywhere what I thought it was going to be, only in little spurts for JJ McCarthy. Kyler Murray's played a ton of games. And he has a certain baseline level of play that he can reach. So that's why I've always thought going into this that McCarthy has the burden of proof. He is the one that has to show that he is significantly better than Kyler Murray in training camp in order to win that job. I mean, it would have to be like very, very clear. Whoa. We got I'm going to have to skip through a little bit to this comment. I'll go back to the other one, but a enormous super chat from Q.Video 318. Hopefully I'm saying that correctly. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much for watching, and not required to get the comment read on the show. Never is for the super chats, but I always thank everyone so much for supporting this show in any way that you can. Even just watch time. Watch time is amazing. Comments are amazing. And the super chats. Wow. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. So, your comment, talk me into JJ McCarthy being the right choice for the Vikings in 2026 based on what you've seen of the quarterbacks. Well, basing it on what I've seen so far of the quarterbacks is really hard because minicamp is just not a good place to judge quarterbacks. There were some people who were out there that said they felt like McCarthy was doing certain things better. And Wes Phillips said the arrow has been up on a lot of things that they asked him to do as far as leaving and then coming back, from the beginning of the offseason to right now. I must not be good enough as an analyst to be really sure about that stuff. Throwing technique during minicamp. Well, what does that really mean? You're just sort of standing there and no one's even rushing you. And I counted one day minicamp, they threw like 7 passes, and this is what we're trying to judge. So what I've seen so far is really not easy to say. But in terms of talking you into McCarthy being the right choice, it would be very simple for me. McCarthy being good is much better than Kyler Murray being good. And what I mean is that if JJ McCarthy arrives and they see it and the gates of heaven open and QB1 walks through and the angels are singing and doves are flying and all that stuff, if that happens, then you've got your guy. And he's still on a rookie contract, but keep this in mind too, that the minute you sign a quarterback to an extension coming off of the rookie contract, it doesn't mean you're just screwed. Like if you look at any of these guys who had rookie contracts and then signed their next deal, it's usually about 6 years before they become expensive. So if he were to be great this year, I mean, you might get in on that conversation about an extension early to try to figure it out and get him at the best possible price. But you at least have another full season of him on his rookie deal, and then likely 2 more seasons before he becomes mega expensive. And he's only like 23. You want this to happen, but you also need to win as many games as you can this year. So that's why McCarthy, after playing so poorly last year, has to really show it. But you want it to work. You think the KOC doesn't want it to work? I mean, that guy, he must be every single day looking up to the heavens and saying, please, Roger Goodell, let this work. Let this work. Let this kid find it, because if he does, then I won't look so ridiculous for letting Sam Darnold go. And I'll be able to say, see, I knew it. It just took time, right? Never a second guess. That's why we went and got another quarterback. But But yeah, I mean, it's still the best case scenario that he's awesome. And thank you again for the huge super chat. Can't thank you enough. Hunter, the Rochester suggestions. The girlfriend is from Salt Lake, huh? Went to university town, so she'll do okay and not a big city. Okay, yeah, it's a very quaint place. There's a lot of culture stuff, a lot of art stuff that you could go see in Rochester. JP, the best for JJ is to not start. Having no pressure to work on his game is fundamental to his development. Coller's been advocating for this since Kyler was signed, and people act like Coller hates JJ. Well, to be fair, the JJ people act like anything hates JJ. I mean, it's like the Anchorman. Like, are you just looking at things and say they hate JJ? I did an entire podcast the other day, and 95% of it was about outside linebackers, and still the comment section was, why do you hate JJ? So, I don't worry too much about that. But I do think that, that is right. It still remains right that if Kyler Murray starts and JJ McCarthy takes the right approach, there is a good chance he gets in games. And if he can get in games and show that he's ready, I remember judging, I think it was actually Geno Smith this way. If you go back, how Geno Smith ended up being the quarterback of the Seahawks was Wilson got hurt and Geno came in and played extremely well. He looked really prepared. He looked locked into the offense, and it was the surest sign. Actually, even Sam Darnold, if you remember, there was a national TV game where Purdy was getting banged up, and they put in Darnold and he played great. And it was like, wow, like Sam Darnold looked really ready coming off the bench. I think it's a good way to judge somebody. So there will be a time. I mean, whether it's, you turn an ankle or fall funny or hit your hand on a helmet, like there will probably be a time where Kyler Murray is going to be out for a week and JJ has to come in, or 2 weeks or 3 weeks. And how he performs in those moments will say a lot about how hard he's been working and how much progress he's made. And I do think it's really good for him to have that development, but it all comes down to how much he makes out of that development. If he's going to be upset and, not accept the coaching or the development points, then it's not going to be as good. Skull Shadow, thank you so much for the super chat as well. Talk you into Thorson getting the punting gig. Well, I can. It would just be if Hecker's done. Like, Hecker is an older guy. He's been around for a really long time. If he is done, then Thorson has a really good chance if he can learn how to hold. But they don't do that I just learned this, that at Georgia, they don't have the punters hold, which is okay. I guess that's fine that they have the quarterbacks do it like old school. And if he can't hold, then he's not going to be able to do it. But if he's out punting Hecker and he's building chemistry with Will Reichert as a holder, that's going to show itself in preseason. That was where Oscar Chapman failed. He just couldn't do it. He just couldn't hold. It's really hard. It's not as easy as it looks to just, put that thing down. Like, you got to do it lightning fast, and it's got to be very precise. Ryan Wright was really good at it, and him and Hecker can both throw the ball. I think that's probably part of it. Joker, you're right, that his girlfriend will have to learn to like blue cheese and not ranch, because they are not giving you ranch on those wings in Rochester, New York. So I got a couple more things for you guys. One, I have some random predictions, which is because I'm doing a series at purpleinsider.football where I'm looking at every team in the NFL and making predictions about them. And I've got a short essay about each team, where their franchise is at, questions that I have, stuff like that. So I hope you'll check that out. And I wanted to bring you some of the predictions for the AFC East and the NFC West. And I did promise something the other day. I said, when we get into June and we're going late into the evening here, we're almost at 9:00, which is our Let's Be Weird cutoff, that I was going to come up with some sort of Vikings trivia game or whatever. So I have 3 Guess That Vikings that I've got some clues, and you guys can guess the Viking. But first, I want to go through these predictions. Let's see. Let's go AFC East first. So here's my predictions for the AFC East. The Buffalo Bills will have to fight to make the postseason, as their defense will decline significantly and they will lose in the first round of the playoffs. I'm not buying Joe Brady as the next great NFL head coach, and I also think Sean McDermott was propping up their defense for several years, and they are going to be a little bit exposed for the weaknesses that they have on their roster. So the Bills down a little bit. Prediction for the Miami Dolphins is that they will shock the world by winning 6 games and buy into Malik Willis fully as their 2027 quarterback. I like Malik Willis a lot. I don't like that roster very much, but that's the prediction, that they're going to eke out 6 games. There'll be a feel-good story, and they can draft an edge rusher or something rather than a quarterback. The Patriots will win the AFC East, and A.J. Brown is going to gain 1,500 yards. When I originally thought of this, I thought, no, that's just too much. That's too much for A.J. Brown. And then I realized that he's come very close to that twice already in his career. I think that he and Drake May are going to click instantly, and that team is going to continue to be really, really good. And for the Jets, I am predicting Aaron Glenn to be fired by week 10 and Cade Klubnik to start 5 games. I am not buying Geno Smith there. I know they have good weapons. I know they've improved on the defensive side. I just don't understand why Aaron Glenn has gotten the benefit of the doubt from everybody for a long time. They had 0 interceptions last year as a team. How is that even possible? And yet Aaron Glenn is back as the head coach. I don't know. I just can't. They got to show it also before I can buy the New York Jets. NFC West predictions. Sorry for the small text. They're a little longer because these teams are relevant to us here. The Los Angeles Rams will win the Super Bowl. Aaron Donald will come back out of retirement. Matthew Stafford will have another top 10 season. The Rams will lead the NFL in sacks, and Sean McVay will walk away from the game to join Amazon at $20 million per year. That is the Rams win the Super Bowl. Sean McVay says, I'm going to Amazon, and he will never coach again. He will be on TV for the rest of his career after winning his 2nd Super Bowl. I have Seattle playing the Rams in the NFC Championship and losing on a Myles Garrett sack of Sam Darnold. Seattle's offense will regress to 16th in the league. They will still be really good, still be the 2nd best team in the NFC. San Francisco, I have time catching up with them to where I've only got them winning 8 games, and injuries will catch up with them. Brock Purdy will not be able to make up the difference, and they will end up at a rebuilding crossroads because they have drafted poorly, and they've leaned so much on Trent Williams and Christian McCaffrey over the years. They're going to have to figure it out. And Arizona will finish with the 2nd worst record in the NFC, but Jeremiah Love is going to be a good time, and will go for 1,000 yards and 65 passes. So there are my AFC East and NFC West projections. We will do these throughout, the week and so forth. And I will have, to end this, I'm going to give these guys, these other divisions their time, but then I'm going to do the whole show probably Wednesday on 20 Vikings predictions is the plan. But we've got time, folks. I was surprised today to see that training camp doesn't start for us to get out there for the first time until July 28th. So we've got time to have a lot of conversations. So here, so maybe like the Vikings ones will probably be next week for Vikings predictions. And here's a little game for you to end the show for the comment section, and we'll see if you guys can get it. Guess the Viking. So the first one, I'm going to give you some clues and then throw it in the comment section. And if you guess the right Viking, maybe we'll have to come up with some sort of prize, but you get a big old thumbs up from me. I need to get, hats. I'm not really like, I haven't done like the merch thing. So maybe I need like Purple Insider neck rolls. Do you think that they would do that for winners? So, okay. So here is Guess the Viking. The first one on the list is 20th all time in Vikings history in rushing. His best play with the Vikings was a 58-yard rushing touchdown against the Chicago Bears. This running back went to Georgia Southern and won a Super Bowl with a different team at age 31. So guess the Viking. 20th all-time in rushing history. Best play was a 58-yard touchdown, a memorable one on national TV against the Bears. He went to Georgia Southern, and he won a Super Bowl with another team at age 31. That is the first Guess the Viking. The second one was a second-round pick from Temple, spent 5 years with the Raiders before coming to the Vikings, had 41 sacks as a Viking, including an 11-sack season that the Vikings won a playoff game. That is the second one. So he went to Temple and had 41 sacks, played with the Raiders before. And I'll give you a general era, was kind of 90s, 2000s is where that one is from. The first one, I'll give you a general era, more recent. And the third one, this gentleman was in the backfield for 7 seasons, but only touched the ball 17 total times. Undrafted from Auburn, went to an NFC Championship game with the Vikings, and then played with Baltimore after Minnesota. So the third one is a player in the backfield, but barely ever touched the ball. 7 seasons with the Vikings, undrafted from Auburn, and was on a team that went to the NFC Championship. And era would be late 90s into the 2000s. Well, you know the times that they went to the NFC Championship game. Those of you guessing JJ McCarthy are correct for number 1. Ragnar is not correct, but great job. Georgia Southern may have given it away. There's probably not that many players that went to Georgia Southern. So I know you guys are just like live streaming a few seconds behind me. So I'll give you some time to come up with the next 2 and see if you guys can get those. So good job by Skull Shadow, Bob, and Beaver's best friend. You all got JJ McCarthy. He was the first one. One of my favorite players ever to cover. Just a great attitude guy, great locker room guy, versatile player. They probably didn't use him quite enough, and won the Super Bowl with the Kansas City Chiefs. So I'm not seeing answers yet to the others. So I'm going to give the answer to the second one, and we'll see if anybody pops in the chat as I'm saying it. The second one would be Lance Johnstone. Okay, Norse Force got it, just as I was saying. Lance Johnstone is the good job, Norse Force. You got it. Well done. A underrated pass rusher that in 2004 had 11 sacks. Kevin Williams led the team with 11.5. But a good player for them that they got from the Raiders. Well done, Norse Force. And the third one is Harold Morrow, the fullback, because I had to include a fullback in this game as the third one, who is in the backfield, literally never, ever touched the ball, played in the 98 team, was really good for them, and, you know, a Viking legend, Harold Morrow. So there you go. Great stuff, guys. Well, I really enjoyed this conversation with all of you, and hopefully you liked the discussion with Mike Clay, because he's great, but of course, you know, should we do one at a time to see the winners in real time? Yeah, maybe I should do that next time, like make 3 graphics. I just sort of made 1 graphic so you guys could kind of look at it and think about it. But yeah, well, see, Son of Beavers, Lance Johnstone is a name that you haven't heard in a while. That's what makes the game great. We'll work on it. We got time. We'll work on it. And things will come up, and we'll get into July, and then we'll get into like the hardcore previews and everything else. But for now, really great stuff. Really great stuff. Really enjoyed the chat tonight. So I'm thinking just schedule wise, like maybe just go live the next couple days, because I'm going to be out of town later in the week. So I might be doing this tomorrow and Wednesday. At very least Wednesday, we'll kind of see what comes up, but maybe both days. So make sure you got those notifications on. You're right. The second and third one, they're supposed to be hard though, right? Like they can't be, if it's Guess the Viking, it can't be like, this guy went to Mankato and was undrafted. Can't be like that. So anyway, well, make sure you got the notifications. Check out purpleinsider.football. And I did make a mistake not giving you FanDuel question of the day, so I'll make sure to make up for that tomorrow. But thanks so much for everybody's time, and we will catch y'all later. Football.